hello, hello, hello. If you can see us, if you can hear us, please do let us know, for it is I, Ryan Sheelander, and I am with the ever wonderful Andy Law, because I'm trying to remember to actually do the intro shit these days.
Oh, look at us being almost professional. You think we've been doing this for 3 years or something? Holy crap.
It doesn't feel like 3 years.
No, it feels like 12.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't realize it's been that torturous for you.
It's been the worst. Hello, everyone. I'm really looking forward to today because we're doing something that I like, which is doing a tier list. These are always amusing. But more importantly, we're doing it on a subject that I'm particularly fond of, which is books. And we all know that I love to tear books apart for one reason or another. And yeah, I really do enjoy tearing books apart. So today we're going to be diving into each of the Arcane journals for the Old World game. And we're going to be telling you what we think of them. Sometimes that'll be positive. Sometimes that won't be. Sometimes it'll be just us saying again and again, 48 pages. Why there's only 48 pages? We want more pages. Holy hell, why is there no more pages? But we can only do that so many times before we get a little bit bored and fed up. So we're going to be going through all of those, giving you what we think of them, and then giving you the opportunity to then vote about what you think of them, tearing them out from S to A to B to C to D. And if I bring it up like so, you can see we've got all of the Arcane journals laid out there in a beautiful line, waiting to be tiered by you. The only last thing I'll say before we get going is that this also demonstrates one of the things that I hate most about the Arcane journals. And I'm going to start off the stream by laying into them just a little. They're beautiful books. They're really nice, with the way the art fades into the pages really prettily. All of the art on the covers is really nicely put together, but when you look at them as a group, they do not stand out, which means if you're using these as references to play games, you've got yourself a bunch of Arcane journals sitting on a shelf, for example. It's really freaking hard to pull the one you want out. This is something that previous editions did far better, either by having far bigger, clearer text. Look at the tiny text on this. You can't even see it on that camera, where other books had big, huge titles, orcs and goblins on it. Or alternatively, if we go all the way back to the 4th edition, they were actually color-coded. That was actually for some later editions too. So color-coded books became nice, big, clear fonts, became super hard to tell which book is which if you don't know the art already. So I really like the look of them all. But I do think they could have done more to differentiate them from each other, because these are not just pretty books for a shelf. These are reference manuals that you need to reference when you're playing, and sometimes you need to reference them relatively quickly. And as it stands, they're a pain in the freaking neck to individually identify.
Yeah, y'all didn't get to see it because obviously we weren't live yet, but there was a whole little fiasco of us trying to look at all of these that we're putting on tier lists and going, which one is that? They're all yellow.
Yeah, it's really funny because, go.
Looking at this image, the only two that stand out super obviously are the Warriors of Chaos, which is red, and the Wood Elves, which is like greenish blue. The rest, though, all have that yellowish, the sun is behind us theme going on.
It's true fact, and they look pretty. You look at the individual ones, like pick up, say, the Orc and Goblin Tribe book right there. Okay, looks really pretty. I look at that art and I go, yeah, that's really nice. I mean, I would criticize it because I'm me. There's lots of things that I'd say, could you do this differently if I was the one doing the art direction? But nevertheless, as a piece, it is lovely. And they're all similarly lovely. All of them similarly lovely. And it really is only the Chaos book and the Wood Elf book that's got any clear color coding or easy access points. So you can immediately go, that's the book that I want. And I really do wish that the rest of them were a bit clearer. Someone saying, for example, that the Tomb Kings stand out a bit. They do a bit because it's a bit paler, but it's not much paler. It's still, you know, the same yellow, turquoise. Yeah. It's not an important criticism. As criticisms go, in fact, I would argue this one's really not important at all. But it is one that slightly bugs me. It's one of those things where you're just like, you could have put in a little bit more thought into how these books are going to be used or even seen in a shop. Because if you had these in a shop, it would be hard to identify where you need to go to collect your bits. And you'd have to literally look over each individual one without being able to very quickly go, that's my one, that's the one I want. And there's lots of easy ways you can do it beyond color, beyond a whole host of things. And they have, I would actually argue, completely failed when it comes to making their products easy to access in terms of sitting beside each other on the shelves or in your bookshelf.
Yeah, I will note, I also think the last big criticism I'm going to give, and then we can start getting into things, is that it really feels like the overall color coding of a campaign book should have been different than an army book.
Oh, like, hell yeah.
These are, one of these is a campaign, one is the Tomb King's army book. If you don't know, they look the exact same. Like they both have the Tomb King's art, same color system. Everything about it's the same. If you don't know what you're looking for, it would be really easy to accidentally pick up the wrong book.
Yeah, and if you're, I mean, not that this is really designed to appeal to parents, but if you were a parent trying to buy this for your kid, you're going to buy the wrong shit a lot.
Yep.
You just are. You're going to buy the wrong books. And unless you've got somebody helping you, which most parents, when they're buying for their kids, just won't have, you are going to totally fuck up the difference between, say, what is an army list and what is a campaign book. Giving them the same title, Arcane Journal, Arcane Journal, Arcane Journal, Arcane Journal, is bullshit. They should have nice, clean differentiation of the different types of title.
Anyway, though, we have bitched about these books for a bit, and we're going to continue to do so over the course of the stream.
But, damn straight.
I think that's enough intro bitching, and we can start focusing on the specifics of each of the individual books. But before we do that, we're going to knock out any super chats that came in before we got started.
Indeed, let's go. And if you've got any super chats you want to see before we dive in, now's the time to quickly tap them into place.
Necroplayer, roll a d20 and put whatever one you land on in S tier, rerolling on higher than 14, ignore this on a 20. So, okay. No, but Necroplayer, I will allow that. The randomization is tempting. Don't get me wrong, it is tempting, but I'm going to respectfully say no, because we do have a very specific bribery system in place here, and we have to honor the bribes as they dishonorably exist.
We have rules for bribes.
Yeah,
we're worse than goblins.
This is a civilized place. What I will say is that for this stream, we'll do kind of the usual thing of that. We'll just put it at a very easy $50 to co-opt a vote. But we are going to do votes for all of them. So, like, no one is allowed to be placed before they get voted on. They have to get voted on first.
Damn straight. Yeah, because we want to actually get all of your opinion before we just start randomly moving around because some people want something to be elsewhere. So we will be getting the votes in first.
Yeah, that being said, Necroplayer, never let it be said that I'm unfair of that. What I will say is this will count towards if you want to do a bribe. So you could do, you could get away with like a $30 bribe and then you're good to go. All right, so it is time for us to get started. And thank you. Oh, wait, never mind. We got more super chats to get. Haha, yeah, I lied. Luigi is... Actually, it's Luigi Super. I always thought it was Luigi is Super, but that would be Luigi is upper, which is not right. So Luigi Super. In Total War, Tyrion has some very friendly voice lines toward the Empire, more than Teclis does, even calling them brothers. Is this canon? I think it's cool. I would say it is not.
No, it's really not. Yeah, this is a classic example of, in some respects, almost good guyifying the High Elves, where they go, everyone loves the Empire when they're on the good guy side, so he must love the Empire too, although his original writings were much more Manslayer, 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 which got turned into maybe Norse Slayer, maybe, rather than, just Manslayer. No, Tyrion Manslayer. He is a 100% elven supremacist.
Yeah, Tyrion is, he's not as bad as, say, like, your Ashlyn.
But is anyone?
Yeah, Tyrion thinks everything that is not an elf is lesser, and he is focused almost purely on elven affairs. To the point where I would go so far as to say don't think there's any evidence to suggest that Tyrion has ever fought in the old world. That he has spent almost his entire life fighting in Ulthuan and like more on the western fronts against like the Dark Elves. Like we know he's been to Lustria, but I don't think he's even been to the Empire. I
reckon he probably has been, though, given the way that the characters were talked about, particularly through the end of 6th into 7th edition, where they were. It wouldn't surprise me if he's in a White Dwarf somewhere doing that, to the point that I'm going to go check that one up because it really wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me, but I would say it also wouldn't shock me if he never had.
I think that's fair. Yeah, totally fair.
Biofoot, Andy Law, literal book cover judge. We need fishermen. We do need fishermen. I would, if they release a fisherman book, I will sing its praises. I will cry.
Me too. I'll be super excited because it would be a new development for Warhammer. And I think these Arcane journals offer the opportunity for some relatively unique and different directions. Having said that, though, they are 100% focused on reusing what's already out there rather than going in a new direction, except for when it comes to Cathay.
Yeah.
Which we get a triple stab at.
Yep. Gnivel. Is high elves with dark or humans with high magic worse? What do you mean by worse?
Yes. The answer is yes. High elves with dark is wrong. Humans with high magic is wrong. And the answer to that question is yes. They are both worse. I agree with you completely. Thank you very much for dropping the super chat. I'm making it as clear for everyone else as it is for me. They are both wrong.
Oh, okay, Archangel. He was in the Empire of the End Times. You're right. He was in the Empire for all of 5 seconds when he got teleported to Middenheim and then the world blew up. That you are technically correct. All right. I like this for my earlier suggestion, at least to keep in mind when we get to the number y'all land on. Okay, fine. You hit the threshold. I accept. I'll find a D20 at some point. I don't know if I have a D20 lying around. I'll get something. Pumpkin King Jack. I bothered both of you on Twitter about this. Andy, you kind of even answered on the episode on Moorheim a while back. How does the universe handle Be'lakor resetting time just to keep Arcane alive, which is what happens in the Arcane novels?
Go.
Yeah, so I'll say what my answer was just so Andy can be like, no, that's dumb, or yes, sir, or whatever. The Warhammer world has an established trope of that there are timelines of where things happen, but then certain entities or characters mess with it, and that thing no longer actually happened or happened in a different way. And there is very little provided to the reader as to how exactly the setting itself deals with that. Is it that there's one continuous timeline and it is the one true timeline and everything that happens interferes with it, but it's only ever that? Or is it kind of like, what they talk about, what I would say is the very popular nowadays of how timelines would work, where it's like when something changes, it creates an alternate reality that coexists, but you can't access it through normal means. There's no definitive answer that I'm aware of in the setting. So you can kind of insert whatever you want. I gave you my version of the answer on Twitter, but I think that's the general question.
All right, so I will tackle it in largely the same way. In fact, I'll go through your question bit by bit and answer it specifically. Andy kind of answered it in the episode more time a while back. I did kind of discuss this, and if you haven't watched that episode, go watch it. How does the universe handle Be'lakor? So this is the important part. How does the universe do it? Resetting time just to keep Arcane alive. The universe couldn't give a flying fuck. The universe doesn't think. The universe doesn't have a brain. So then the question is, how are the physical laws of the universe being manipulated? And the answer is magic. So basically, magic is making things happen. Whether it is resetting time or whether it's Games Workshop themselves rewriting the Warhammer world, something is occurring. Now, you can go with almost any answer for what you prefer with this. In my role-playing games, I have personally come up with in-game answers for that. Lawhammer has already tackled it to a degree. Previous versions have tackled it in very different ways. I've had all sorts of answers to this because Games Workshop itself doesn't answer it because they could care less, but not much. Really not much. This is one of those things where Games Workshop really are only interested in telling the tale they're telling on the day and how many miniatures will that tale help sell. This is not of great importance to them, and thus the answers that we come up with is very much whatever you want. If you want to go with the alternate universe options, great. Alternate timelines, great. Everything just resets, a little bit like Back to the Future, great. As far as Games Workshop's concerned, whatever they're currently working on is 100% real. Everything else is weird. And we're going to touch upon that to a degree through the course of this stream, because Warhammer The Old World rewrites the world in a whole host of relatively interesting places. And whether that's the maps, taking on some details for some relatively dubious sources, or whether that's just taking an existing story and turning it into something else, the Old World has done this. The Old World is basically doing exactly what Be'lakor did before. Be'lakor came in, reset time because of important shit. This resets storylines all over the place. And as followers of the lore, some of us get upset by this, some of us like it, some of us couldn't care less. I'm one of those people who tries to make it all make sense as and where you can. And that's what this question essentially alludes to. How do you make sense of it? And the easiest way to do so is with one single word: chaos.
Yep. And that's also why, like, when you're enjoying the setting like we do, one of the things that's really, really good to do is try to make everything make sense in a way that you like, which is what Andy and I do here on Lorebeards. Of like, we don't really look at anything and go, well, it's not canon, so it doesn't matter. We go, well, that doesn't make sense. Because if you play it by that means, the setting kind of just fucking sucks. So we try to make it make sense. And that often results in us discussing alternate realities. And what are the ramifications that, even though they didn't happen in the current timeline, what are the ramifications from those alternate timelines that could still have an impact on the core timeline? Because, like, information didn't get ported over, but it also didn't get retconned. So, like, theoretically, it's still kind of canon. And stuff like that. Drago Knight. Bretonnia pitch. The Lost Sons return as Arcane Knights, master of combination of Akshi and Shaman. Not Grail Knights. Appear, save day, leave. Only answer to Enchantress and Prophetess loaned to Dukes. Why Akshi and Shaman? That is a very strange pick, in my opinion, for the Lost Sons of Bretonnia.
It's certainly a choice, isn't it? Actually, I'm pretty cool, but it's a choice.
Yeah,
Arcane Knights.
Yeah, I will say personally, I really, really like the answer that we got from the Court Beneath short story by Phil Kelly.
Good one.
Where he does have them as essentially Arcane Knights, but they're way weirder. They're very weird, which I like a lot. I mean, this could work. I would have several questions. Akshi and Shaman is usually not associated with the themes of Bretonnia, which tends, especially when you're dealing with the lady, where you're dealing with, like, the power of the land and mist and, like, the waters and the deep forests and the sacred places. Akshi and Shaman are about as opposite to that as you can get when dealing with the lores of magic. Not impossible, but why?
I totally see Shaman because that allows you to wear full plate.
Yeah, that would make sense.
You could see Shaman being relatively useful, and actually because it's burning and cool, and who doesn't like guys throwing fireballs? I mean, it's cool.
I'm not denying it's cool. I'm not denying it's cool.
Yeah, this is cool, but I feel that if you're doing this, you really want a really cool story to make it all make sense. Now, how often do I say that?
Yeah, man, that is one of our taglines here. Wildfoot, the universe deals with Be'lakor by letting him fail. That is a way you can interpret that.
And I still disagree. I think Be'lakor is one of the more effective chaos agents out there. It's just that we focus on the points when the good guys win. Or
that's very true.
Be'lakor's kicked out, one or the other.
Grim Isaac, is May 12th open for the What If a God Invaded stream? I got it off and would like to be there for the stream when it does actually occur. May 12th, that's very specific.
May the 12th be with you.
You know what? Just because you've been very, very, very persistent, and I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as a compliment. Let me check our schedule. Okay, we do have something planned for the 12th.
Yes, we do.
So that date is not available, but any day, any week past that is currently available.
Yeah, that's currently an Age of Sigmar week, so you don't want to be missing that one. It's going to be super cool.
Yeah. Luigi Super, it's not popular, but I love Good Guy High Elves. I would actually argue that it's very popular.
Yeah, I'd argue that too. And I would also argue that High Elves are neither good guys nor bad guys, really. They're High Elves, and they're looking after their own. And they have a complex set of relationships with other factions around the world. And for most of them, they're arrogant motherfuckers, and they think they're better than everyone else.
Friend or trader, do orcs and goblins shed the same spores? That's
fun question.
Yeah, could an orc sprout out in a night goblin grotto? Could a goblin appear in a savage or cobble? So the real core answer is we have no fucking idea. We don't understand how greenskin spores work, because the only time anyone in Warhammer Fantasy, literally the only time anyone has ever talked about it, was the Skarsnik Black Library novel, which is a second-hand account from an unreliable narrator. Being Skarsnik literally dictating his story to a poet who is then or a playwright actually, who is insane and has had his eyes ripped out. He's been tortured. So is what Skarsnik tells him and what he remembers to tell someone else accurate? Probably not. But that is literally the only book that tries to give detailed answers on how Greenskin Spore works. Games Workshop has not touched that in years. So I don't know.
Yeah, the answer to this one is actually easy to tease out if you look for it. And that is, if you believe that the spores is the answer for the greenskins, which I think everyone generally nowadays says is the case. It was super controversial at various points in Warhammer's history, but nowadays most people just tacitly accept it. If we do that, the most obvious choice to turn to would be 40k, and immediately you go, oh, whoa, wait a minute, and a whole bunch of questions get asked. Particularly this one. Are they the same spores? If we go to 40k, basically the answer is yes. But in Warhammer, can't be that simple. It simply can't be, because orcs don't pop up in goblin tribes.
Yep.
Goblins don't pop up in orc tribes. They tend to group together, and entire empires of greenskins are almost predicated upon certain types of orc and greenskin or goblinoid, depending on what you want to call it, popping up in one area. The great fallen holds of the dwarves that have been taken over by the night goblins, for example, are full of night goblins and nothing else. There's just night goblins down there. So the answer to this one is yes, they probably shed the same spores, but no, that does not mean that an orc will pop up in a night goblin grotto or a goblin pop up in a savage orc hovel, because the mechanism of those spores in the Warhammer world in comparison to 40k is clearly different. So we've got a different mechanism in place.
Full agree on that. Pumpkin King Jack. All that
Pumpkin King. Thank you.
I want to thank you guys for what you do. Well, thank you for the support. We really appreciate it. I'm just obsessed with Warhammer Fantasy. I've actually read every omnibus edition of the Chronicle novels. I just love this space. It's a good time. It's a great time.
Yeah, it's also a good time to be a bit of a Warhammer fan. It was a bit of a dead period for a while. Then the old world popped up, and it's just been alive again, and it's really nice. It's just fun. Yeah. That's one of the reasons I'm looking forward to this
12 years ago was a interesting time. Watchdog, has there ever been an Arcane journal that has both enraged yet impressed you both? You could argue like all the Cathay ones, to be frank.
All the Cathay ones. I'm the same. All the Cathay ones. They both make me super happy, and they also kind of enrage me. If you've ever watched any of our previous streams where we're discussing the Arcane journals and what they do, you'll know exactly why. But for me, I will go off on one about the editing, the choices of the editing. It's not. I rarely, almost never, lay it at the feet of the writers. I absolutely do leave it at the feet of the developers of the entire line, who should have sat down and came up with some clear answers to some obvious questions that these books pose and very badly answer. So yes, the Cathay books.
Yep. Korenshima, no need to think if they really are. Wait, what are we talking about?
God damn it. I feel like we've missed something, Korenshima. Korenshima, please add a second comment there.
Yeah, who is thinking versus R-ing? Azure Shadow, I really like the one Bellicor quote in Arcane ever chosen between chapters. Speaks of saving his pawn. The phrasing uses words like roll of a die or flip of a coin. Makes me think of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay and Fortune/Fate points. That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah, it's good.
Kurt Kobrek. Hello, you handsome devils.
Hey.
If you could each canonize one thing about the unnamed/lost dragon children, what would it be? Such as their element, where they might be, what they're like, etc. You want to go first? Or you want me to go first? Because I know mine.
Mine would probably be canonizing the dragon that Arcane killed as being one of the dragon kids.
That was one of mine. Okay, Andy's going to take that one, which I'm taking that one. Agree with. I will take that. I want the shadow dragon to have willingly defected and went to Nippon as an agent against Grand Cathay.
Yeah, that sounds good too. I like that as well. I think both of those have got strong thematic resonance for the way they've set up Cathay as well.
You're coming across a little bit boomy, apparently.
I'm boomy in general. What I'll do is I'll turn the sound down at my side. So hopefully that will sort it out. Give me a second while I just quickly dive in. Don't want to be louder than anyone else. How does that sound? Am I at a better level now?
It sounded the exact same.
Okay, so I've turned it down by almost 15% on our side. So hopefully I'm a little bit quieter. If not, just tell me and I'll turn it down even further until eventually I sound like a normal person.
Forbisa, greetings. I think we also need to do a Warhammer Fantasy Black Library novels tier list. No, that would be so long.
Long.
Okay, they just say apparently the base is very high.
The base, that's going to be tougher for me to fuck about with instantly. Where
you do sound easier. Different than the last stream. Yeah, it's there's definitely like I don't know why, but your microphone does sound different today.
I don't know why. I haven't changed any setting on it. Perhaps the kids did when I was away, and I've just not caught up with it.
Well, no, because it was fine on Sunday.
Yeah, I thought so too, but I can't be certain.
Yeah. But Parmesan, if we were to do something like this, we'd have to break it down by like subcategories. We couldn't do like a whole. That would literally take like a 24-hour stream. Like it would be.
I mean, you know what? We could do it.
You think so?
Yeah, I think we could do it. Okay, but if we did it, we'd have to be very, 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 very tight with ourselves and simply say no more than a sentence or two of an opinion, and then slapping it up ourselves as we go through it. We could do it.
Yeah, just like putting an addict in a crack and saying, just don't touch anything.
Yeah. Okay, I'm readdressing. There's no chance we're doing that.
Swarshads. Had an absolutely awful morning that somehow managed to solve a problem in my D&D campaign/novel thanks to my cousin's horrible timing. Let's rock. That sounds like a story. Hope you're okay and hope things are going all right. Okay. With that, it is time for our first book, which we are going, for anyone curious, in alphabetical order. And so today we are starting with the Beastmen Brayherd.
Beastmen, dun. So the Brayherds, do you have anything you'd like to start off with? Your opinions on those, Mr. Ryan?
Yeah, so I am going to I'm going to start with a very brief overall pro and con. And then as we kind of go, we can get a little more specific. So the biggest pro for me going into this book is that this is one of the few books that actually got a brand spanking new character who actually feels like they slot perfectly into the setting. Where we get Kralmaw, the prophet of ruin, who is basically a blind seer beastman that is obsessed with Morgr and is basically an agent of Morgr. He's kind of like a high priest of Morgr. And that feels like something that slots extremely naturally into the setting. And he's one of those characters where it's like, of course this guy exists. And it feels like he should have been in the setting ages ago, but he makes Morgr feel like a much more substantial character, that as he should. I also very much like, and I'll leave that as my one pro. I'll do one pro and one major con. My biggest con with this book, and this one is like some of the books do that, some of the book don't, is that this is unfortunately one of the books that did not give us a timeline section. I really like having timelines.
Me too.
Because they add a lot of really fun details. This book lacks that. And that's probably my biggest issue with it. So I will let that be my starting pro and con, and then we'll get more into specifics as we go.
Yeah, so all of the Arcane journals follow a similar format in that you get yourself a bunch of pages at the beginning that go into some background material for whatever the book at hand is detailing. It then goes into a bit of a scenario, a bunch of painted miniatures, your army list sitting at the back, along with a magic item list generally, and in this case, something that I actually dislike about this book. I'm going to call out something I like right after, and that's the fact that they went, Lore of Primal Magic! Yeah, so it's the Amber list. Okay, so we've got ourselves what is clearly spells that other people other than Beastmen should be using, but because of the way they've structured magic in the old world, we end up only getting them here. And it means that everyone who should have access to some of these, a couple of these are pretty famous spells, Flock of Doom, for example, which are spells that are basically just Amber spells, and others should be able to use. They can't, because they're just here. But having said that, that's more of a criticism for how the old world handles magic. This one is, in the greater scheme of army lists, not that bad. It takes you through the setup for the Beastmen as they are. It doesn't really tell you anything that new. It goes to reiterate stuff that we've seen many times in many other books, like the Dark Tongue, which pops up multiple times in various versions of old Chaos books. But everything that's added is broadly fine. Ryan's actually called out the bit I liked most, which was really tying in what Morgr is to the Beastmen and giving a really good intro into that, which I thought was lovely, particularly because it feels like it's a proper setup with Kralmaw for what's coming next. You get that idea that Morgr will be coming, and that's like a prophecy of doom right in the beginning of the book. But I found myself at the end of this book going, well, that was quite light, but at least we got Beastmen.
Yeah, which shouldn't need to say that, but you do, considering they've been squatted from AOS, and in fantasy, they stopped getting books.
Yeah.
Like Old Face, we've never got an 8th book or a 7th book.
No, was there no 7th?
Oh, no, we did get 7th. We
got 7th.
Yeah,
we got 7th. And Beastmen as a separate part away from Chaos has often meant that Beastmen have been left in this weird place of being Chaos's rubbish army, in comparison to, say, the Warriors of Chaos or the Demons of Chaos, Warriors of Chaos, all of whom are, Chaos's chosen ones, and the Beastmen over there who are the children of Chaos and just kind of run along, never really being that special. But I think this book did a better job of making them feel like they might be a bit special because of the focus that they had on Morgr as sort of almost a little back thrum to it all. It's not the core point of the book, but it's definitely there, and I like it.
Yeah, so I want to do a quick just like blow through the book, just for anyone that's never had the chance to read these and like whether something I think is overall good and bad of that. So each of the books has like a particular narrative. This book I think has one of the better narratives of that. You basically get to follow Kralmaw tracking down the newly reborn baby Morgr, as Morgr had just recently died and has just been resurrected, and how the Wood Elves also immediately find Morgr, and there's a race between Kralmaw and Morgr that builds up to a battle where Orion, King of the Woods, goes to the Lorelorn to attack Kralma. And what this book basically goes on to reveal is that thing that actually I think did a really good job of showing that chaos is on the rise. Orion loses. Yeah. Orion dies, and Morgur is spirited away safely, which is cool. That's a fun narrative that I think is a good setup for where the edition, the old world is supposed to be going narratively, which is chaos is getting stronger. When you get to the sub-factions, every single Arcane journal, all of them come with 2 sub-factions. This one brought back a really classic one, which is the Minotaur Blood Herd, which is just basically like, you want to run an army of Minotaurs? Here you go. Which like, cool, fine. And then Primal Gatherings is it's a more Morgur themed one, but it's based around Bray Shamans and Mutation, which that one in and of itself, I wouldn't say is interesting, except when it came to giving us new units, we got a unit that we've never had, which is the Warped Gores, who are super cool. They're basically like Forsaken, but Beastmen. So they're Beastmen with extreme mutations who every time they fight in combat, they mutate more. So they're like on that step between a regular Gore and a Chaos Spawn. And that's cool. That feels like a very natural unit for Beastmen to have. From there, they give you mixed units, which is a nice callback to like 6th edition, 5th edition, where you could have mixed units of Gores and Ungores. And then they brought back the Praeton, which was awesome. Bringing back the Praeton is a big...
my next point. Praeton. I love the Praeton, so it was nice to see it pop up. Yeah, it's a pretty solid book. The lore's pretty solid. The storyline's pretty solid. The armies are fine. This isn't one that I'll admit that at the end of it, I was like, holy shit, I'm really glad they did that. But this is one at the end of it that I didn't criticize hardly at all. And as we're going to go through these books, there are quite a few where I was pretty critical.
Yeah.
Where this one, I wasn't. I was like, this is the Beastmen. This is Warhammer Beastmen doing the Warhammer Beastmen thing. Whoever's written this one has clearly looked into the previous army lists and has plucked the obvious story that the old world should focus on, Morgor, and slammed it in. They've gone, I quite like Centaurs, and they've given us a Centaur character. It's solid. It's a good book.
Yep. So with that, it's time for our first poll. I will handle the YouTube poll. If one of the mods could please kindly handle the Twitch poll, that would be grand. So what tier is Beastmen Brayherd?
I'm nixing D because I don't think this book deserves to be a D. So on the vote of 4, it should be SEBC. Now, as you're doing the vote out there, what you need to consider is, do you think this is the best book that the old world has to offer? If you think it is, it's S. If you think this book is super solid, it's a good book, it doesn't do anything wrong, it's possibly one of the better books that we could get for the game, it's A. If you think this book did fine, it could be better, it could be worse, it's done some shit wrong, it's done some shit right, make it a B. If you think this book is just not that great, this book could be better. Seriously, Games Workshop, why haven't you pulled your finger out and done a proper job? Make it a C. If you think this book is bad, dudes, what the hell are you doing? Then I disagree with you. It's not going D. So that's the overall general gist of each one of them. Having said that, though, your own opinions as to why you think this book is important are entirely your own. You might think this book is the best because it's Beastmen and you love Beastmen. It's clearly an S tier. Alternatively, you might go, I fucking hate Beastmen. These guys suck. What is it with their freaking horns? Why are they so bothered about them? I refuse to give them anything other than a C. Vote C. This is entirely up to you and your own preferences.
Yep. Yeah, and the things to keep in mind is that it did advance the narrative. Not all the books do, but this one does actually advance the narrative story. It also had like some nice units that got typed in. We got a brand new character and a good returning legacy character with Goros Warhoof, the sire of 1,000 young, which is pretty fun. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and hop into super chats, and then by the time we're done with those, we will have our answer. But make sure to vote now. Okay, we left off with Ricky Chapman. Beastmen can let them hear the Wild's call. I wonder what Ricky voted for. Torrance Stolberg became a brand new YouTube member. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining up.
Corey, off question, but do either of you attend Gen Con? I would like to. I don't remember where it is. I would like Indianapolis. In a perfect world, I would love to represent Lorebeards going to every single nerd convention, like AdeptCon and Gen Con and PAX or whatever the hell. But we have not quite reached the point where anyone invites us to anything yet. But if anyone is out there and wants to message your local convention or a convention you're going to and be like, hey, you should invite these Lorebeards idiots, we
for
would.
A panel of 12.
Yeah, we would absolutely be delighted to do that. I don't have any intentions on going to Gen Con anytime soon, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, Gen Con is one that I'm almost certain to turn up at within the next few years because of the Rookery. We've got a new game that's about to hit relatively soon. I was working on it literally today. Good times. But Gen Con is also over in America, and right now America is just a tough country to visit, and it's not one that we have a great deal of excitement to visit for a whole host of border-based horrors. So yeah, maybe I've been before, and I would like to go again. I've been doing cons over in Europe a bit more frequently, so that's a more likely outcome for me just now. But we will almost certainly turn up at some cons over on the American side, but you might find it's mostly the American Lorebeards like Ross or Ryan or whomever might want to turn up on a particular week. Let's see how the vote's going on Twitch. Vote going on Twitch is going relatively strong at the moment. A has got the win, but there's not many votes there. So if you don't think that's right, go over to Twitch right now and get your vote in before the poll's over. Because there's very few on the Twitch side. Yeah, very few over on the Twitch side are voting. So if you can get over onto that side, your vote will make a big difference.
And that is time. So pretty overwhelmingly in both YouTube and Twitch, a solid A.
So let's move it up to A. Look at that. A. So what do you think, Ryan? Do you think the Beastmen book is a lovely, solid A for an Arcane journal?
So honestly, I'm a little bit conflicted on this one because I feel like in a vacuum, yes, it is an A to me feels fair. I think compared to all of the other Arcane journals, it's honest to God an S. In my opinion.
Yeah. So as we make our way through these, you might find a lot of the others sound much worse. And I'm sort of in agreement with Ryan's place, but I think he's correct. I think if it's an S-tier book, it deserves to be an S-tier book. And the Beastmen book isn't. It just isn't. When I read the Beastmen book, I didn't reach the end of it and go, oh, fuck me, that's great. I reached the end of it and went, they haven't messed this one up.
Yeah.
And that is not a great outcome. And that's not something that screams S tier to me. That's something that instead just makes me go, well, that's a thing that happened. It's fine. It's a pretty good book. It's solid. I like it. I think it's a clear A out of the options available, but I'm not sure I'm ever going to recommend anything higher. Let's find out as we dive into our next book, which is almost certainly for B for Breaching.
Yes. Before we do that, I'm just going to grab this one because it's just relevant to that particular book. Shane Famir didn't make it into the Beastmen book. Me too. I had heard rumors they were going to be in it, and I was so excited, and then they weren't there, which made me really sad. I really hope the Famir are going to return to the old world. I really want the old sculpts from the Arcane Journal and the Monstrous Arcanum because we actually had a ton of Famir sculpts, and I really, really hope we get those back in fantasy, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah.
All right. Next up, we have the Breaching of the Great Bastion. Ooh.
Breaching time.
You all may remember, we're not going to spend super long on this book because you may remember that me and Andy very recently did a stream just the other week about this book where we went into it hard. So I will do what I did last time, where I'm going to do this the smart way, which is that I'm going to go over the general sections of the book. Then I'll do a pro and con. Then I'll pass it over to Andy. So this book is generally broken down to a couple of straightforward sections. We have one that's kind of like a general information about Grand Cathay at large. We then get a very nice timeline section, 4 pages of timeline.
We get the timeline's pretty good too.
Yeah, we get the reveal of what Kuei Yin looks like, which is art that had not been revealed till here. Then we get a detailed geography section on only northern and western Cathay.
And there's definitely no mistakes in that map.
Yep, nope, none at all. Then we get the elemental wind section, which is a little controversial, but interesting. Yeah. Then we get a detailed a set of pages about just magic in Cathay that manages to answer surprisingly few questions. And then you get the general gist of like how Cathayan armies are built, which is cute. Then we get the actual story section, which details an attack on the Great Bastion, where Miao Ying basically allows the gate to be breached. So it's kind of sort of breached, but not really. And then she kills them all. Whoop-de-doo. Then there's a paint section, and then we get our 2 armies of infamy, which once again, every single one of these books has armies of infamy. We get the Jade Host, which the Jade Host is a more elite army that focuses around lots of more elite troops. And then you get a lot of allies. So this is like an allied contingent. So it lets you have units from like the Empire, Dwarfs, High Elves, and all sorts of stuff in it, which is cute. And then you get the Warriors of Wind and Field, which is actually my preferred army because it's actually a distinct Cathayan army, which is a peasant-themed army. So like if something goes bump in Cathay, like a Beastmen herd attacks a village, or there's like ogres that come down from the mountains, the first force they're likely to face is this army of infamy, the Warriors of Wind and Field, because these are basically the grunts and the standard people you'll run into on the battlefields of Cathay, which is cool. And then as for like units and stuff, we basically got all of our peasant units. We got bigger guns with gun infantry with the crane gunners and the iron hail gunners. And then we got just standard astromancers. So Cathay finally got a wizard that wasn't just a shooting gun on a big mount.
Yeah.
This book is weird, to be honest. It portrays itself as a campaign supplement, but it doesn't actually advance the storyline. It goes backwards in the storyline, which is okay, but it makes it like a distinctly odd book. And it also isn't really even a campaign supplement. It's just, how do I say this nicely? Cathay, yes, Cathay should have been a 8th edition or 7th edition sized army book. Instead, they split it into 3 arcane journals, which is a bit silly. This is the 3rd one, and it's kind of the silliest because of it.
Yeah. So, what do you do when the Cathayans are selling well? You make another Cathayan book. And they're still selling well. Let's make another one. And if that's not their excuse, they deserve to be shot. This entire setup of a 3rd book that's supposedly a campaign book but isn't, portraying Cathay yet again in much the way that it did before. Cathay's perfect, but it isn't. And how do you know it isn't? Oh, it's complicated. You're then left with a slightly bigger question, and this is my big criticism of this one that goes beyond what we discussed when we tore the book apart, and we did tear it apart. If you're onto your 3rd Cathayan book, what do you expect as a customer? You expect book 1 to give you a dragon, book 2 to give you a different dragon, and book 3 to give you a different dragon, and focus upon how each different part of Cathay is super different. Did they do that? No, they didn't. They give us Miao Ying, and what Miao Ying's doing, and Miao Ying. And with scant differences between the armies, I mean, they are different, but man, they're not different enough that it feels like we should have 3 fucking books. It feels like it should have just been 1 book that they actually did properly. Then it would have justified the single dragon that sat alongside it. It, for me, just disappointed me almost end to end for everything it didn't include. Mostly, where's my next dragon, goddammit? Haven't you paid a sculptor to do one the last few years? Holy shitballs. How many of those would you sell? What the fuck are you even doing? I can't help but swear because I'm Scottish and I'm disappointed. This book is filled with inconsequentialities. A book about the collapse of the Great Bastion. We're going to get everything we need to run that, right? No. It's an event that happened in the past. It's stupid when you actually tear apart the lore for it. And you're just left going, huh. So this is one of the books that when I read it, I was like, seriously, this is their next book. They've wasted a whole release slot on this.
Yeah.
It's not bad. I actually quite like the book, which you might be very surprised at. There's quite a lot in it. It's got some lovely details about Cathay. It's got some lovely details about magic. It's got some lovely details throughout. But it's just one big meh burger. It's just disappointment almost from end to end. All the things that it just doesn't do. I was beyond excited when the first Cathay book came out because we had a new army for Warhammer and it was adding a whole bunch of new lore. Now, if you played Total War, it wasn't new lore mostly, except one or two little important bits. We'll be getting to those. Shiyama, we'll be getting to those later. But this one is almost scant on really cool new information. It's doing the same thing the previous books did, and also not giving us a new dragon and really cool new troop types. I was deeply disappointed with this one.
Yeah, so I will give 2 pros and 2 cons. To, I think, sum up my feelings.
Hopefully balance me.
Yeah. The first is that if you care about playable armies and the tabletop and all that stuff, this book was critical for making Cathay feel like it actually had a full army. Because this brought in the peasants, which were core, and it brought in ranged units that weren't giant fuck you war balloons.
They're cool.
Yeah, which were fine, but also completely broke the meta because they were so fucking obscene. But it felt bad to try and nerf them because Cathay only had artillery. Like, Cathay didn't have a single standard shooting unit. Now they do. Like, this book made Cathay feel like it actually had a playable roster. Which is like one of my big criticisms about the other 2 books that we'll get to, is that without this book, Cathay had a really, really tiny range. This opened up Cathay really, really well. Another pro is that we got a really nice timeline section that gave us some really good details in some really unusual places. Like, we got like a really nice nugget about the Monkey King. We got some good stuff about Li Dao and Yin Yin. Cons, I very much agree with Andy of this book could have been amazing if it had advanced the storyline instead of going backwards. And all they had to do was, instead of it being, oh, this is Miao Ying dealing with a breach before she left, which was weird. Instead, if this book had been, Yuan Bo is now in charge of the wall because Miao Ying is gone. Yeah. How does he deal with it? And if this book had been about Yuan Bo and him, what he's dealing with back in Cathay, and had given us a Yuan Bo model, this book would have been ace. Like, it would have been so good.
Yeah, I would have loved it. It feels like this happened. Okay, our Cathayan army's a bit pissed and everyone's complaining about it. So let's get the rest of the stuff we should have released out now. Here's a book that gives them it. Now let's try and add some shit and make it sound exciting. Okay, it's about the Great Bastion and it falling. Really? Is it? No. I mean, yes, that's exactly what it's about. Okay. Yeah.
I'll say, or if they wanted to go back in time, this could have been about like hundreds of years ago, or minus 1500 IC, when the Great Bastion genuinely cracked open. That would have been a really cool story too. Like, they could have done it kind of on anything, and they just picked a kind of whatever story.
Yeah, it's just not great.
Yeah.
The focus of the narrative is not great. The focus of the book is not great. But, and I think we have to say the but, because Ryan's completely right. I dig the timeline. It provided quite a lot of cool new stuff in there. I dig the concept that was behind the book and what they were trying to do. I thought the execution was terrible on multiple levels.
Yeah. Also, my last pro and con. Pro, the art, beautiful.
Oh,
beautiful
art's great. Yeah.
Con, the map, completely fucking bizarre.
And also pointless.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, man.
All right, it's vote time.
I think it is. And
A, B, C, D.
I think ABCD, yes, unless anybody out there thinks that it should be an S and it just desperately loved this book. I see no reason for it to be anything else. The art is gorgeous. The concept of the book is lovely. The Winds of Magic and how they try to repitch it, badly in some cases, is pretty good. They did it overall a good job, but the book in itself, I fear, didn't quite land. But you might disagree. You might be out there going, actually, no, this book kicks ass. Drop in the comments why you think that's the case and drop that big, huge vote in for the particular letter you think it deserves. Is this an A, a B, a C, or a D, or is it secretly an S? And if you all vote A, then I think we might do a second vote between S and A, just in case, you know.
Don't lost your fucking minds. Yeah.
I mean, if you all think it's an A, I'm quite happy to throw it in that direction.
Get your votes in, get your votes in, get your votes in. Drago Knight, because it's up now. Arcane Knights designed to be equal but opposite to damsels. Shaman for armor, Akshi for damage, and anti-wood elf. Not allowed to be people. Just weapons of the lady. Why they remain in the other world.
That is an interesting idea, Dragon Knight. The opposite of damsels, yeah, I can see that. That works pretty well. Shaman for armor, yes. Actually, for damage, yeah. Anti-wood elf, I don't think they particularly care about that one way or the other. The wood elves are obviously a core enemy, but they're also a potential ally depending on the time of the year. Not allowed to be people. I'm also not sure about that. From what we can gather from the court and from the damsels, they are more than happy for their representatives of the lady to be human. So I'm not sure that's the best way it lands. They seem to be a bit more esoteric and Celtic in their direction. Just weapons of the lady, I'm not sure I go with that one either. Why they remain hidden in the other world, I would definitely come up with a good answer for that one, though.
Keep in mind, if you're looking for us on Twitch, we are at Lorebeards Twitch. That's the full name of the account. It is not Lorebeards. Yeah. It's Lorebeards Twitch. It's a dumb story that I'm not going to bother explaining. Just know it's dumb. But it's Lorebeards
and it's Twitch's fault too. So
yeah, Twitch's fault. Guys. Gnivel. Oh, we already did that one. Thank you again. Rodaki, could you touch on the armies of infamy in each Arcane journal? Yes, I will do that.
I'm straight.
Shadow of Nox, Kislev to S rank. Oh. Also, how big is the Sons of Manon's naval force?
How big is a block of cheese? How long is a piece of string? It's one of those things that will be as big as is required for the story at hand. The Sons of Manan is not the largest naval force by most measures, but the second they do a Sons of Manan supplement, you'd be damned if it didn't have a naval force of 50 boats ready to blow everybody up. Because Games Workshop loves basically over-egging the pudding the second they're doing a new faction. And when they go, actually, they have bajillions. But if we go with the standard lore, it's a relatively small force.
Yep. And that is time. And both YouTube and Twitch are once again, surprisingly, in agreement. And they have said down to C for Cathay.
So what do you think? C for Cathay, fair for the breaching of the Bastion?
In my opinion, yeah. I actually think that's pretty fair. I think, although it is very easy if you listen to us talk about the book, it sounds like we fucking hate it. But that passion is born out of it's so close to being great that it frustrates the fuck out of us.
Yeah, and I find that taints my opinion of the book really deeply because my frustration for this book is enormously high because this book is almost a really good book with just one extra character, with just a re-edit to make sure the focus is tight, and with just a bit of a consideration for how to best move the plot forwards. With just a few small changes, this book would have been S tier easily. It would have been possibly their best book, but as it is, it's a book that's deeply inconsistent with highs and lows all over the place. For me, it's almost a B. I think I might even go B if I was doing this with fair, trying to be objective thoughts, but I find it hard not to be tainted by my disappointment and to drop it, much like yourselves, down to a C.
Real quick, just want to grab the Singemeister. Hello, lads. I'm 32 today. Happy birthday, Singemeister.
I would just like to say, obviously, happy birthday, and say I find it always very depressing when people come along and they're, oh, it's my old birthday, and they're old enough to be my son.
Laughs,
deeply disappointing.
Laughs in 34. Yeah.
I mean, 34 is cutting it close for being my son, but 32 you can do.
Yep. All right, from
Happy
there,
birthday to you.
we are on to the Kingdom of Bretonnia.
Bretonnia. It was our first dip.
Yeah. So this was one of the earliest Arcane journals that came out. And this one, basically, to do a very brief breakdown of it, you basically get notes about the realm of Bretonnia itself. Then they talk, they actually do a surprising amount of depth to talk about the different kinds of vows and like the chivalric code. Pops. It's rude. And they actually do go through the effort of giving like bullet points about like how does knightly honor work? What is the code chivalric? What do knights do to make penance? What is the exile's vow? So they do some nice world building for the Bretonians there. We then get a note about the geography of Bretonnia, where they talk about some of like the more famous forests and sit towns and stuff. You get a cool map. Where we get all of, like the heraldry and stuff. They show like a knight shield and how they have like a cool section that shows like how knight shields evolve as they gain vows. Just just cute stuff. You get your painting section and art. Then you get your main story. So the main storyline is the War in the Border Princes, which this is part of a series. So there's basically 3-ish major campaigns going on in the old world. This is the first one, which is Cetra is invading the old world, and Bretonnia is kind of on the front lines to dealing with it. And so this book covers, well, how is Bretonnia dealing with it, and details how they go fight in the Border Princes against the Tomb Kings, and they are rallying to various locations to hold off against the Tomb Kings, which spoilers, does not go well for them, actually. But in this book, they go, oh, we're going to go fight Cetra. And then we'll get to a later book that explores what happens when they go up against Cetra. And it's not great.
Yeah, it goes well.
It goes about as well as you would expect. From there, we get some details about the Crusades, where they do confirm that the Crusades still happened, which was neat. Though they notably avoid calling Sultan Jafar. He's just the Sultan. So we have no idea what his name is anymore. And then we get our Armies of Renown, which for this one, you get Bretonnian Exiles, which admittedly was a very popular release because it was Bretonnian Exiles. So they are Bretonnians that are happy to use guns, which was actually a very cool callback to Old Bretonnia. And then we also get the Crusading Force, which was another really fun one. And this is you basically aren't allowed to have peasants. You just have knights for days. You are a crusading group of knights. You're really supposed to take very, very few peasants. And then as far as the other things that came in the book, we got some nice special characters. They brought back the Green Knight, which is always lovely. We got a brand new character who is actually very important. And if he is who me and Andy think he is, then he's going to become massively important, which is Sir Cecil Gaston, who is in a bit of a disgrace at the moment, but if the timeline stays relatively consistent, is likely going to become Bretonnia's next king.
Yep.
We also get Lady Elise Duchard, who is the first playable special character for the Damsels that isn't the Fey Enchantress, which was neat. And she has a gorgeous mini, which is also neat. And then for the units, it mostly focused on giving you how to play exiles. So it's like a lot of Border Prince units, like the Border Prince Bombard, the Border Prince Brigands. So it's who fights with your exiled knights. And if you were not an exiled thing, literally the only thing you got was like Yeoman Guard and which are basically just better yeomen that have like Grail pilgrims or Grail monks with them and stuff. So the book revolves very heavily around the Border Prince exiles. That's the main point.
Yeah, and this was our first proper dip into what the old world was going to be offering us for the Arcane journals. And my opinion of the book is thus tainted because of this. Because we were hopeful, deeply hopeful, for what the old world would offer. And for those of us who were old Warhammer Fantasy Battle fans, we were used to army lists, which were double the length. Literally double the length. These lovely little books are super thin.
Yep,
I mean, just look at that. Super thin. And the Bretonnia book, when it came out, I was pretty critical of because it felt thin. It felt like there was lightweight information at best. But now we're a good number of years into the old world, and we look back at what this book offers, and we can't help but go, holy shit, this is one of the better ones. It's solid. It's telling a story. It's setting up for the future of what the old world's going to offer with Future King coming as well. Got a really nice, super cool character. We got a different version of what Bretonnia offers as an army type. Bang, bang, guns, excellent, exiles, brilliant idea. It was an imaginative reimagining of Bretonnia with just a smattering of details for what Bretonnia is added on top, which for those of us looking for lots of cool new stuff, were exceedingly disappointed by. But when you compare it to the other Arcane journals as they came out, you can't help but go, you know what? This is par for the course. It's just how they work. Fair enough. The Arcane journals are tiny little skimpy manuals. Gotcha. And in terms of the other books in comparison to this one, it's actually pretty goddamn decent.
Yeah, I will say some con is that this was actually before they started implementing timelines in the Arcane journals. Yeah. So there's no timeline. That's a bummer. An upside, though, is this book had, I think, is the first place book for the amount of special characters, being that we got three. One being the legacy character of the Green Knight, and the other two being brand new, which is very, very nice. And the thing that I actually majorly agree with Andy on is that some of the Arcane journals, like the Beastmen one, the two armies of infamy are cute, but really only the one that kind of focuses around the mutants felt new. The one for the Minotaurs, that's not a new concept, which isn't a negative. It's just kind of like, okay, that's a thing that I kind of probably already did anyway with my army. It just makes it a little better at doing it, which is cute. This book, though, is like, no, these two armies have very distinct, lore-accurate, great themes. Where, hey, you like the errantry, or you like the Great Crusades against Araby and Bretonnia declaring crusade? Here's an army for that. Oh, you want Bretonnia, the desperate exiles who are willing to do anything to survive, so they work with brigands and guns? Here you go. And they both got brand new units. Whereas, like, once again, the Beastmen one, if you're playing like the Minotaur Blood Herd, none of the units that came in that Arcane journal were for that army.
Hard agree with all of that.
Yeah, like you can take it, but it didn't actually vibe with it. Whereas this book, really well done.
It was really interesting going back to it because I'd not actually gone back to the Bretonnian book for, I don't know, maybe a year and a half or so. It's been a wee while since I last read it, a hot minute at the very least. And going back, I was like, you know what, this is not as bad as my memory was telling me. This is pretty good. And in some respects, yeah, that shows how my standards have lowered because of the nature of the releases that we have. And it's true, my standards have lowered. Because they've had to lower because that's the nature of the old world releases. But nevertheless, as I was making my way through it, I was like, you know what? This is good. We've got something here that's relatively innovative. They're telling a good story. They're progressing the story. They're giving you an idea of what's possibly going to be coming as they head towards into a hopeful second edition or later, when the characters that they established in the first become something different as you move into the second, or maybe third, depending on how quickly they move the timeline. And I looked at it with a lot more favor than I did the first time round. I think that this book offers quite a lot of both lore, interesting characters, and story in general. It doesn't do too bad. Yeah, it's missing a timeline. Yeah, it's missing what I feel is still a lot of cool detail about Bretonnia that just isn't in there. If you don't know a lot about Bretonnia, you're going to be left at the end of this book still not knowing quite a lot about Bretonnia, at least in terms of what it was in some of the previous editions. It's not a fact-filled book top to toe, but it is still one that does, with broad brushstrokes, give you a really good idea what the faction's like, and then immediately moves on to undermine that with a quick, and by the way, take a look at these exiles. Yeah, it's pretty decent.
So with that, we'll go ahead and get the vote up. Also, funny enough, this book predates something that happens with the Arcane journals as they get as we get older or later into the thing, is that almost every single Arcane journal for a faction comes with a brand new lore of Magic. Sadly, these guys predate that particular development, so they didn't get one. But I don't think that's necessarily that big of a minus, because the army specific Arcane or lores of Magic have been pretty hit or miss. So that's, it is what it is.
Yeah, no joke.
Yeah. So that one I feel very confident doing SABC. Get your votes in now. Vote.
And make sure you do go vote. And if you're over on Twitch, get your votes in, because we are not getting as many votes in on the Twitch side by some measure, which means that your vote will make a big difference towards the overall output. So if you want to make sure your vote gets the biggest boing, go dive into Twitch as well, because boing is an official term.
I also will note, we are officially at the point where if your army has passed and you want to be like, hey, fuck what everybody says, I am ready to bribe to get my favorite somewhere else on the list, whether you think it should be at the bottom or the top. The gates are open on Beastmen and Breaching and soon to be Bretonnia for anyone that cares about that. And it's $50 to throw them wherever you want. Bilefoot, of all the gooses, this is the silliest. Yeah, that's a good description of the Great Bastion. Baron von Boot. I'll never forget the misnamed city from Total War. Yep.
You're so right. When
that was very funny realizing that live on stream. That was funny.
I didn't notice that, and indeed we realized it live on stream. And when I saw that, I was like, "OMG!" You can see the mistake and how it's happened. Oh.
Necroplayer 97. I may have misinterpreted it. If I did, sorry. But Andy responding to these books AI writing claims by saying AI would have written it better is a critique that really amused me to no end.
I mean, you sort of didn't misinterpret it. There was some lines that really sounded like it, but some people write that way. So in no way am I saying that it was an AI written piece, but that, by golly, there were some that just made you go, warning signals.
Super Orlock, good to see you. Thank you so much for the super chat.
Excellent.
Z-Drum, my bribe wasn't about the Dwarfs group's general, more the overarching story with them and Gromberdol and Gotrek, GW's seemingly goal of reuniting. Your bribe? Did you? What? Huh? What?
I feel like I've missed the bribes are drawn. I hate missing bribes.
Yeah, I don't see a previous super chat.
Are we talking about the dwarf bribe over for Age of Sigmar? Because if it's that one, that is coming next month. We've already got it on our schedule. And more the overarching story with them and Gromberdil Gotrek, that will almost certainly pop up through the course of the stream, because we will be discussing each of the dwarf factions.
Yes, and that will include going over like the general storyline of the dwarfs.
Yep, absolutely.
Sig River Guy, do women serve in the Empire State Army stories? They do, yes, though it's changed in some editions. There's a really interesting examination of this. Go read the Blackheart's Omnibus. It directly talks about this, but in that book, the answer is no, but there's a character that's dealing with that directly. But in the modern lore, I would say the answer is actually very heavily yes.
Yeah, the way to answer this, if you want to ensure that it sounds inclusive for all of the lore and not necessarily inclusive as a setup, is that they serve in some state armies and they don't in other. You've got to remember that every single state, as in the great provinces of the empire, have got their own rules, and every single province within most of those great provinces have also got their own rules. So the answer is almost certain to be in places like Visenland, a hard yes. Somewhere like, so for example, Talabicland, a little bit more sexist up there. Very likely most of them are mostly male. If you head up towards Hochland, the answer is likely to be yes, because a lot of the long riflemen are women. However, you go over to Middenland, the answer is almost certainly going to be yes, surprising many, because they, if you go to Middenheim in particular, have a long history of having women inside both their police forces and their armies. But if you go up to, say, Ostland, the answer is probably no. So everywhere's got its own stuff. As we move into the modern version of the Empire that's being presented by Games Workshop cares much less about individual stories in individual places and generally just uses broad brushstrokes. And when it comes to the modern empire, the broad brushstroke will be yes.
Yeah. All right. That's time. So this one's interesting. Twitch had a 56% on S.
Oh, wow.
But on YouTube, we have 21% S, but only 54% for A.
Okay, so A on YouTube, S on Twitch. When we have a break, we normally go YouTube gets the swing because there's so many more people voting on YouTube.
That's very true.
And I think that's fair here. And if you disagree, bribe. But I think in this particular case that A seems to be the winner on balance because YouTube has got the weighted vote. If you don't like that, head over to Twitch and get voting over on that side. At the moment, there's a fair number of you, but there's let me just double check there. Yeah, there's not a huge number voting over on that side. So do make sure you head over onto Twitch.
All right, so Bretonnia goes to A tier in standard Lorebeards fashion. When there is a tie on multiple or multiple books in a tier, me and Andy get to decide where it goes. And I'm going to be blunt. I think Bretonnia goes above Beastmen.
I'm trying to see if I can argue that point. Give me a second. I don't think I can. If we'd had a really cool, consistent timeline there, which we don't. We only got a couple of special characters. We do. I mean, Beastman's super solid, but I do think Bretonnia is better, and particularly because Twitch voted for it as an S as well. I think putting it ahead absolutely makes sense.
Yep. All right. Next up, this one I think has the chance to be surprisingly controversial. So next up, we have the Dawn of the Storm Dragon.
Dawn of the Storm Dragon.
This book was the first ever campaign-focused supplement for Warhammer: The Old World. So whereas before this book came out, all of the prior Arcane journals have been purely focused on being an army update. This one, even though it kind of was an army update, it just kind of disguised itself as a campaign supplement. But this one genuinely is much less focused on the armies and is much more focused on telling a narrative story. And so this book follows the basically there's no opening section talking about like Grand Cathay. There is nothing in this about early Grand Cathay. Instead, it jumps immediately into what the Warriors of Chaos book set up and what is the Beastmen book set up, where it basically says shit in the North Empire is whack, yo, and not going well. Where Chaos, Friedel the Chainmaker, has taken over a good part of Westerland. Morgur is rampaging the Larlorn, and Orion has been killed, which has thrown the Elves into disarray. Everything's a fucking mess. And basically, Miao Ying and the Jade Fleet show up as reinforcements. And we get a story. There is a section that does focus on a lot on the entire world, which was a very interesting choice. So instead of like doing like, oh, this is what Grand Cathay is like, they say this is what trade is Cathay for like. So they say this is what naval trade is like for Cathay. This is what Cathay does in the Darklands. This is what Cathay does in the Mountains of Born. This is what Cathay does in all these other places. So it gave us this really interesting worldwide view of Cathay and how they interact with other factions. So there's a whole section dedicated to talking about their relationship with Ulthuan, their relationship with the ogres in the Mountains of Morn, their relationship with the hobgoblins and other factions in the Great Steppe. And then from there, you get the full narrative section, which details how the war in the Westerland goes. And it basically tells us about how Cathay suffers a lot of losses, but teams up with Marienburg and starts pushing north. And they push Friedel the Chainmaker back to her home fortress, where Friedel is actually defeated, not killed. She does get away, but she is defeated, and the chaos is, at least for the moment, at high cost, routed from at least that part of the empire. Though they still have their clutches in the absolute northern parts of the Westerland. And this one also gives, this one is actually one of the few that gives like a full multi-plan campaign. So it's like, hey, here's several missions to play in order to recreate the events. This was also, because it just keeps going, this was the first book to introduce how to play multiplayer games. So how to play with more than 2 players per game. rules were introduced in this book for that. And then it also finally added this one, interestingly, only gave us a single Army of Infamy instead of two, which this one is basically just the Army of Infamy that this book has, which is Marienburg or the Empire teamed up with Grand Cathay.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that it does is you get rules for, let's see, what's the only thing you get rules for in this, actually? Actually, no, there's no new units in this book. That's what it is.
Yeah.
There's not a single new unit in this book. Because this one, once again, this one's a little weird. It is almost purely a campaign supplement. Literally, if you're a Grand Cathay player, the only thing you got in this book is you got new magic items, and you got one new Army of Infamy, which allowed you to take Empire allies.
Yeah. So this is an interesting book, but we over in Lorebeards aren't really here reviewing the best books for the old world game, because that's not really what we do. We're more talking about the lore, and this book is actually pretty heavy on that side. It doesn't dive into all the cool shit that we want from Cathay, but it does dive into a lot of cool shit about how Cathay interacts with the world, and that is pretty cool. It also advances their storyline pretty far, giving a whole campaign to also reflect what that storyline's general passage is. Also pretty cool. Sure, it completely lacks new units, really does. And I was disappointed by that. When I first read through this, my first reaction was, oh, interesting. This is completely different. No, it's actually different. This isn't, because I thought it was just going to be an Arcane journal like any other, and it wasn't. It just wasn't. It was a completely different book. I was like, oh, well, there's quite an extensive set of mini campaign rules here. And oh, well, the player, this is quite interesting. As an old world book, I rate this one pretty highly because it adds a lot to the game. But as a lore book and general interest book, I rate this one, well, you've already heard what's in it. It's more important at this point, what do you rate it as? It's got quite a lot of cool extra detail, but is this important to you? Do we get another dragon for a book that's supposedly about Cathay and the dragons? No. Do we get more units which would have balanced out the Cathayan army? Absolutely not. We just got to include some Empire units to hopefully balance out your slightly shitty army. It didn't really do quite enough to make me go, yes, Cathay now feels full. It felt like it was really a supplement to the first Cathay book, and it should have been sort of wrapped up into it. But that isn't what we got. Instead, what we got here was a pretty dense book for lore, unlike most of them, but that's because it doesn't include the same amount of rules as in armies as the others, because it spends more time focusing upon campaign rules in other books. It's just a different set of balances in this one. It was an interesting read.
Yeah, I will say that something that I really like about the book is this book had the most. This book has some absolutely incredible art.
Yeah, the art's gorgeous.
Focuses really heavily on like what it's talking about. Like we get art of like the hobgoblins fighting Cathay in the steppes. Like we get this whole art piece about that. We get art of like what Cathayan ships look like. We get a bunch of unique art pieces of Miao Yang. We get a piece of Miao Yang dueling a fucking chaos dragon. Mm-hmm. Cool. There's a lot of crazy good stuff in this book. And from a pure lore standpoint, I think this is honestly the most dense Arcane journal.
I agree.
It focuses on because it doesn't just like give us 2 pages of like, oh, here's the war for the Westerland. There's build up to the war in the Westerland, then a good amount of world building that led to some very funny moments here on Lorebeards. Like if you're a fan of that whole thing where we talked about of Sea Lord Ashlyn having a secret love affair with Yin Yin, that came from this book. Because it detailed the relationship between the High Elves and the Grand Cathay at sea, and it's really interesting.
It is.
But there's no timeline, which granted, this book doesn't really need one because it's very hyper focused on a 2-year time window. So it has a very unique niche among all these.
Yeah, it does. So on my side, it's missing lots. no timeline, no extra army of infamy, no special new troops and cool funky shit. There's just nothing new on that side. But it is also lore dense. It's one of those ones where if you're really into the story that the old world is telling, there's a lot for you here. If you're not, there is surprisingly little, a little bit about how Cathay goes with the world, some beautiful art pieces, but it's not necessarily that great. It's an interesting mix of things. It is a confusing book, though, if you're looking for the Arcane journals to be anything close to consistent, because it's deeply inconsistent with the rest of them.
All right. I don't think it's a D, to be frank, so I'm going to do SABC.
SABC sounds absolutely right for this one. I think that's fair as well. Also, could we make the time on this one a little bit longer so we can get all through all the super chats?
Yep, sure.
just a tiny bit, just to make sure we get through them all, because I think we've got a few stacked up. I'm not sure we do have many stacked up, but I think we did.
Petrus Hypotis.
Oh, we don't have many.
Andy and Ryan. Assuming the timeline moves forward, what developments are you looking most towards in second edition of the old world? Perhaps the fate of King Lewin. The fate of King Lewin is very, very, very high up for me.
Yeah, me too.
His death better be spectacular. I'm going to be really fucking pissed if it's like a nothing burger. If I will say, I am praying that Cetra kills him. It would be such a big win for Cetra to show him being an actual threat if he successfully fights his way all the way up to Bretonnia and kills the fucking king. And he goes, I won, and goes home. That would be so good for the setting, in my opinion.
I could not agree more. Cetra has been so badly served by so much of the writing. And when we get on to the Undead book, I think he's also been, to a degree, badly served in the old world. And I would really like to see Cetra land for what Cetra is, which is a terrifyingly capable character. And he is often not pitched in that way.
Yeah, and I will say that the biggest thing that I hope second edition sets up that I want to see, like, obviously we have the Chaos Threat building. That's all great and fine. I really want to see Bretonnia crippled to set the stage for the Bretonnian Civil War that is the affair of the False Grail. Like, Bretonnia should frankly get its shit kicked in to say, how do we set up for, how can things be so bad that a duke can be almost comically mustache twirling evil, and Bretonnia goes, yeah, no, I'm going to side with that guy because we're desperate. And if it's the Tomb Kings wreck shop before they leave, that's a very nice, natural first story arc being slowly brought to its conclusion to set up for Bretonnia's renewal and its rebirth under King Gaston.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. And just to mark out, if you want to get your votes in, get them in now over on Twitch. At the moment, it's B that is winning, but it's only winning by a vote or two. You can change that round if you pop over and make your vote now.
Sean Schultz, is one of the Dragon Kids stalking Ashlyn? I wouldn't use the term stalking. I'd say they have flirtatious meetups that Ashlyn is probably very embarrassed to admit, and that's purely Lorebeards canon, but we're going to treat it like it's canon.
It was quite a good one, I thought.
It was. We were very proud of that.
And grounded in the setting rather than done purely for fan service reasons.
Yep. Ryan Von Agier, which faction would make the best hamburger? Halflings. Gotta be halflings.
That'll do.
I wouldn't trust it. I understand ogres have butchers. I would not trust ogre cooking. I wouldn't. As a human, if I was an ogre, sure. But as a human, it's gonna kill me. Magladroth, and then we're caught up. Chaos Gods tier list part 2 for missing gods, please. Like the Great Beast and Morslib win. A lot of that would be me and Andy going, does this thing technically exist? And the answer often being no. So that probably
we covered that in the Chaos stream.
We did. Or a Chaos Champions tier list. That we could do, but we'd have to be... That list would be... A lot of people would be pissed at who we would not include on that list.
That'd be a toughie.
That would be very tough. And Petrus, thank you for the 2 months. Cetra dub's cool. Maybe Empire helps drive him away. I don't think anyone needs to drive him away. I think if he killed the king, that would be his furious spent. And he would say, I will now return to my tomb. Like, Cetra's not the kind... That's the good thing about Cetra. He's not the kind of character that's going to come squat. He will go fight, win, go home. All right,
yeah, I could run with that.
That is time.
Time.
Both Twitch and YouTube are once again in alignment, in concurrence, and they say B tier.
What do you think?
Oh man, I'm actually really conflicted on this one because in some ways it's my absolute favorite book because it's purely focused on the narrative. But when I'm thinking about a tier list of Arcane journals, I also think in some ways it fails some of the basic requirements to be an Arcane journal.
Pardon me.
So I would say B tier. You got some water? I would say B, honestly, to me seems pretty fair. It's above Breaching of the Great Bastion. That's the important part. But yeah, I would say a solid B, I think, is fair.
I also think it's fair. I think that as a book, it's much like most of the Cathay books. It's highs and lows. The highs are pretty high, but the lows are pretty low. It misses out on some key features that would just make it a more useful book overall. And I sorely miss anything new for Cathay.
Nope.
It felt like a waste of time. And when I got it, I was like, what goodies are we going to get? And I opened it up and I was like, there's no goodies. I'm not getting goodies. All I'm getting is stories about the goodies that I'm not getting. What the fuck? Where's my new dragon? There's no new dragon. Okay, where's my new troops? Some bowmen or something. There's none of those either. What? I can take Empire troops? Seriously, have you not made any new models yet? Get making the miniatures. Get sculpting, for fuck's sake. Get them in the factory. I want more. Didn't get more. It felt like it was treading water. And they tread water pretty well with this book, but it was still treading water. I think B's utterly fair. Are we heading into the Dali?
Yeah, we are. So,
yeah.
Dwarven Mountain Holds.
Here we go.
All right, I'm going to start off.
Are you a Dali fan?
I love dwarves. Dwarves are one of my favorite factions, which leads to a bit of an issue. So this book starts off pretty straightforward. It actually does, it does a whole thing about these are the dwarves. This is what you need to know about dwarves. We get a cute little section about these are the major holds. It focuses on a bit of a weird list. It hits all the big major ones. You get like Karazakarak, then you get Karakazul, Barakvar, Karakadred, and then the thing that made a lot of eyebrows raise when looking at this book, Vala Azro Ungol, or Carrick Eight Peaks as it's known to most. Everybody went, why is that not under the Lost Holds? We'll get into that. Then they do a couple of the Lost Holds where they go over the really, really famous ones. Cute, fine. Do some stuff about dwarf clans and engineers. We get some art. And then they get into the storyline. So this book does something very weird, which is that technically, this book, Dwarven Mountain Holds, advances the storyline. However, very uniquely among all of the Arcane journals, this book has fucking nothing to do with any of the main narratives. So there's the storyline, there's the big first storyline of Cetra's invasion up into the old world, and then there's the second big storyline of Chaos invading into the Westerland. Those are the two major stories of Arcane journals, or first edition. Now, you may go, oh, surely the dwarfs maybe got in the way of Cetra's invasion. And yeah, technically they do, but that's not covered in this book. This book instead details how the dwarfs are invading Carrick Eight Peaks, essentially. And they retake a fallen outpost, a minor hold, and they're basically doing the Carrick Eight Peaks plot, which was a bit of a shocker for a lot of folks, because we went, wait, I thought this was the old world, not 8th edition. And this book basically goes, hey, Belagar, well, technically, says Games Workshop, Belagar wasn't the first reclamation attempt. He was merely the most recent. So we're going to detail a brand new one. And it's like, okay, fine. That's a technicality they can get away with.
I mean, it's fine, but
yeah. But first of all, fucking nothing to do with the actual narrative of the edition, which is very weird. Now, if the Skaven were a playable faction, maybe this would have been a cool tie into the Skaven Arcane Journal, but there isn't one. So, and then we get our Armies of Infamy. This one, the Armies of Infamy were pretty fun and are actually relatively popular. You have the Royal Clan, which is basically like a very elite, blinged out dwarf horde with a lot, like a very wealthy clan that can afford a lot of like runic items and characters and stuff. Cool. And then you get the Expeditionary Force, which is an engineer themed army. Fine, that's totally cool.
It gives you an excuse for Burlock, so I'll take it.
Yeah. Then we get the special characters, which has two major positives. Well, kind of three positives, but one of them is very tainted. Which for us lore people.
Oh, I'm getting angry already.
Thorgrim Ulliksson, the Carl of Damaskron. So here's the problem. That's not his name.
No, it's not.
Because the first thing it says is Thorik Ulliksson, the oldest son of Uli Grimbolg. Then who is Oleg? And then it goes on to say Clan Oleg. Games Workshop doesn't fucking understand what son means, apparently.
Yep, that was definitely a choice.
So he should be Thorgrim Ulisson, but instead they just fucking goofed on that, and there is no excuse for that goof. They just fucked that up. I don't understand how they goofed that, but they did.
Yep.
But it does let us know about younger Thorgrim. It is actually a genuinely pretty interesting story. It's very fun. Ungrim Ironfist, who got a brand new mini. Gorgeous mini, I will add. We get the story of younger him, even though he is already king at this point, so that's fine. And then Burlock Damondson makes his grand return, and he looks great. This is before he blows his arm off, which is also very nice, because it kind of sets up for that story. And there's a lot of notes in his lore that explain his character, where you can see that he is absolutely going to blow his arm up.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fun. And then for the units were okay. So this one's kind of interesting, where the new units were very meh, but the legacy units were pretty fun because they brought back the Storm of Chaos minis, all of them, which for most of them was great. The one that I think had myself and a lot of people very irritated is they also brought back the fucking Goblin Hewer.
How can you do that? Sorry, it really angers me.
The Goblin Hewer coming back is a slap in the face. I'm going to be honest. They shouldn't have done it. Yeah. I understand they have the mini lying around, but they just spits in the face of the lore, and it's really frustrating.
And for those who don't understand, the Goblin Hewer is invented in the end times, well, close to the end times. It's the whole point of the frickin' thing, the stupid Goblin Hewer for the Storm of Chaos, and is invented then, not 200 years earlier.
Yeah, so this basically just takes a big old shit on Malachi Makaisen and his whole thing.
We love Malachi.
We do. So this was very disappointing. Outside of that,
bullshit. The
legacy units that we were very excited to see return, Doomseekers, great. No notes. Awesome to see Doomseekers back. As stupid as it sounds, I think many people were actually very excited to see the dwarf carts return. So like the beer station, or it also could be a miner's cart with like explosives and extra ammunition and stuff. So it's like, oh, that's cool. The Imperial Dwarf Mercenaries, allowing you to take dwarfs with all sorts of bizarre weapons that regular dwarfs will go, that's not proper, but Imperial dwarfs are like, nah, fuck you, I'm taking spears, yo. Very, very cool.
Yeah, agreed.
So, and then this book did we got new items, but the items in this book were excellent. So you got runic tattoos that actually do stuff for all the Slayer characters. So controversial, but fun. And then
super cool.
Something they did that was really cool was engineer weapon runes, where they said, hey, you know all those engineers with those crazy guns, you can put runes on them now, which everyone went, oh, cool, which was fun. Because, like, if you could slap it on a war machine, why can't you slap it on a gun? And this book says, well, now you can, which was very funny and cute.
Yeah, this is for me, this was when it arrived, I was filled with meh. And there was a reason I was filled with meh. It's because I was comparing it to what came before, because it was still relatively near the release cycles of the start of the game. And I was hoping that we'd be getting a lot of new, cool, extra stuff. But no, that's not what the book was about. It was all about taking the old miniatures and reusing them. And that then leaves me to go, well, if it's not going to innovate for the dwarves and show what they were like 200 years ago and how that was different, then what's the cool story? And the cool story was the same story I'd seen already, just with different characters handling it. And to make that slightly worse, it was also nothing to do with the core plots of what the old world was offering. So I got no new further developments of the stories. I just got to see some characters I liked because of Warhammer, leading some armies that were slightly different if you were new to Warhammer. But for someone who's played it through all the editions, it was basically just, all those old models, you can use them again. And this book felt like it was a fine example of filler. And we need dwarfs, so here's the dwarf book, and we are doing fuck all new. Fuck all interesting. Fuck all that makes someone like me go, holy shit, that's cool. It's just the same old holds being rediscussed in a slightly different way. And I do mean slightly different. It's almost the same material, just copy-pasted over, with some of the material for fantasy roleplay, a map full of locations, many of which haven't been founded yet, with items that haven't been invented yet, with art that's been used from multiple books that came before. And I was really sort of disappointed. And this was the book that on my side, when I was going through them first time round, that sort of broke me. This is the one that made me go, the old world line is never going to impress me. It's never going to make me go, this is great. What it's going to offer is a jumping into of Warhammer Fantasy and getting to enjoy it again. And this book had almost nothing new under the sun. And I was really rather disappointed by that.
Yeah, I think we got four new pieces of art, but the vast majority of the art is from older editions.
Yeah, it's almost all new used. You got the nice bits in the middle, which are cool. And the bit at the beginning, as I recall, the opening part, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
And that there comes from War. I mean, it's ancient.
Yeah, that was from Warhammer Online.
Yeah, it's a really old piece.
It was. I think they did. It was nice seeing, it was cool seeing Thorgrim and Ungrim younger and in a new form, and the fact that minis came with it was very, very nice. The minis that came with this book were the release were very solid. Like the Thane on Shield, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous sculpt. They did fun things, but this book, the biggest criticism of a level of it that I think Andy agrees with based on what he was saying is that it doesn't really feel like an old world book. It kind of feels like this weird tack on to old Warhammer Fantasy.
It's a nostalgia book.
Yeah, which one could
argue for dwarfs, theoretically.
Yeah, theoretically very on brand. One could argue that it's doing what the old world is supposed to be. This book feels like a Horus Heresy to the 8th edition Dwarf Army book. Funny enough, it feels like the lead up to that book. Of that, it even lets me use the same units and stuff. But the Goblin Hewer, hated that. The being not understanding that they made Thorgrim's name wrong, hated that. The story itself it's fine.
It's fine, but that's all.
Yeah, it's not a bad book, but it's certainly not a great book.
But it is dwarfs, and we know there's a lot of dwarf fanboys out there. So if you happen to be a big fan of dwarfs and you think that we're talking clearly bullshit, almost certainly Elgy talk, then you know what to do. Vote it for S tier. What do you think we should put this one? This is a tough one to place, isn't it?
I feel I almost feel like because of the Goblin Hero and Thorgrim, I refuse to allow it to be S tier.
I agree. Okay, so A, B, C, D for this one. And again, if you disagree with us, you know what to do. But I think A, B, C, D for this one seems fair.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, 100%.
It's like I remember being very excited reading the book, but like even looking at it now, it's kind of like it's very okay.
Yeah, it's very okay. It's an isolated book that pulls upon nostalgia strings, gives you characters that you knew and love already, but in earlier forms, gives you a couple of new minis, gives you a ton of old minis. So if you like the old minis, you can pull out your old ancient metal ones and go, hey, these are current now, sort of. Here's my Imperial Spearman. Woohoo! It's a funny old book, this one. But yeah. Vote wherever you think it should be voted for.
Interestingly enough, the biggest pro I would give this book, which does not help it, in my opinion, on the tier list, is that for people that play the tabletop game, this book was fucking gold. Like if you play Dwarfs and you wanted some fun new armies to play and you wanted lots of new rules, this book had you fucking covered.
Seems fair.
It was awesome for Dwarf players. But it's not really what this tier list is about. In my opinion, you can disagree and you can say, no, fuck you. I like that A tier. Fuck you. And that's fine.
Yeah, totally is. And for me, it really needed to dive into a little bit more about the old world story and really feeling like it was talking about the old world. And I think with it just been repitched slightly with perhaps a new unit for a certain type of dwarfs in that particular area, suddenly awesome.
I will say there's a very funny thing we'll come to in a later book that I'll talk about that actually addresses my biggest criticism with this book, but we'll deal with it when we get there.
Also, no timeline. Fuck that.
Yeah, that too. Elemental exposure. I'm way behind the stream. Norgal to S tier. Been a while since Yes, indeed. Biofoot, dwarfs for D until we get crab dwarfs. We do not need crab dwarfs. We do not need crab dwarfs. Ricky Chapman, we need a book with the POV of a dragon blood and how they feel about their parent and the rest of the dragon siblings. That would be cool as a Black Library book. God forbid we get more than a single old world Black Library book. But you know,
fuck me, yeah.
But we need more. We need more scouring books. We haven't had enough. We need Horus Heresy 2 Electric Boogaloo. Fuck Horus Heresy.
Anything. Fuck me.
Ricky Chapman, also for putting the Goblin Hero in the book, the writers get rid of the Damas Kron. They should.
So fucking hard on that one, Ricky. Just no.
A buyers, I hope you're not suggesting the dwarf book came up short handovers over Damas Kron.
Okay, I am.
Yeah, there you go. Dawi forever. Dawi stands strong at the mountaintops. It just needs a polishing like all gems. You know what?
Actually, yeah, if this book had gone through another editing pass and a little bit more of a focus upon what the old world was presenting, as if the old world had been given a very strong plan at the beginning and ran with it, rather than it looks like it's made up as they went along, I think this book very much could have landed well. But as it stands, it's almost impossible from my perspective to put it on S.
Ooh, y'all were divided on this.
Oh, really? I'm interested.
Twitch chat said... Wow, okay, hold up. You buckled in for this? Twitch chat said 45% A, 36% D, and then 18% C.
Wow, okay, that's a thing. How about YouTube?
And then YouTube said 33% C, 33% D, 19% B, and 15% A.
Wow, that's really divided.
That was a scatter shot.
Yeah, I mean, that's really hard to pin down. Okay, so, wow. Okay, that feels like it should sit right in the middle then, given how it all sends it.
Sounds...
you know what? I don't disagree with you. Tohu.
Yeah, I think we will slap that into C, because that sounds like everyone was scattershotting pretty much around like lower middle-ish.
Yeah, I agree. C does seem to be the right. I mean, yeah, given where you are, CB. Let's add up the percentages. Yeah, I think C is where it sits. Again, if you disagree and you're a Dawi fan, well, I won't say anything. So that then gives us
crack open the Horde's wealth. It's way better than Breaching.
It's way better than yeah. Totally agreed. I didn't even need to ask. I was like, yeah, it's going ahead. It's clearly a better book. Is it better than the book above it? On B, do I think this book deserves to be a C? Okay, that's a toughie. What do you think?
I think a B- is probably where I would have landed as opposed to a C+. And I think that's because the writing in it is not bad. Like, there's a couple of annoying errors, but it's not bad. And the stuff that it focused on, I think it did well. I just wasn't a huge fan of what it decided to focus on. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, no, it does. No, it really does. Thinking on this, I was sorely disappointed when this book came out because I was pretty excited to see what they were going to do with the Dwarfs. I was hoping for largely the Dwarfs that we know and love, because I wasn't expecting the army list to be hugely changed, because they're Dwarfs, they're traditional, they maintain this. But then the idea of an engineering group, I was like, oh, holy shit, we could get something pretty clever in here. But they only covered it with rules, and they didn't really do anything cool on the mini side. And I was really disappointed by that. That's the part that I expected to get something cool with, and I just didn't get it.
And I will say, there is a book we will get to that literally is this book, but better. Which you may go, what? And you'll see when we get there.
You'll see when we get there. And by the time I hit the end of it, I was just disappointed. And the egregious mistakes that it made really stuck out for me because I was sort of disappointed. So I was looking at the mistakes more rather than being happy with it and seeing the mistakes and going, you messed that bit up, but I'll let you off. I didn't let it off. I actually think a C is fair. I think a C is fair as a Games Workshop book. In comparison to all the other Arcane journals, perhaps it should be a bit higher in B, but I'm happy with it at C.
Yeah, and granted, I am also, I'll admit, I'm very swayed by the rules stuff. That, like, I love that they actually introduced the concept that dwarfs could runically infuse their tattoos. Very controversial, but very cool. I like the idea that you could have like runic infused ink that you're like putting into the Slayer's flesh that actually gives them some kind of buff. And getting engineer runes on small arms fire. I don't think I literally have never seen that before. And it's like, of course that makes sense. So like there was some world buildy-esque stuff that the rules established that I loved, but it also wasn't focused on narratively.
And I will also say it made me upset with the roleplay game for not including that.
Tohu. Thank you.
Yeah,
I will remember that.
Tohu Bohu. Thank you very much. So that being the case, I think C's fair. Let's move on to
Grand Cathay 3.
Grand Cathay for a third time. What is this? It's our first Grand Cathay book this time, though.
So this is the OG Grand Cathay book. So this is the one that is actually focused as an army book rather than a campaign focus. This one starts with a focus on what is Grand Cathay. We then get the first art reveal of Shen Yang, the Celestial Dragon Emperor himself. We then get a huge amount of text detailing the entire it's mostly the early history, but we get a big early history of Grand Cathay, and then the Land of the Dragons, which details little parts of Grand Cathay and even actually delves into the fact that the Celestial Dragon Emperor is missing. And then they hit Cathay and the Old World, which is kind of there's a lot of history. It is a ton of history. And they get into stuff that a lot of people were really excited to see. They talk about the Sky Titans. They talk about Grand Cathay's relationship with ancient Nehekara. We get, of course, the mini reveals, which are really pretty. We get a Grand Cathay army list where they, give us the big thing. We get Miao Ying, and they explain how that works. We get like a whole bunch of crazy cool units. And this is, and then like at the back of the book, you get like 2 new lores of magic. You get magic items. This book, for how small it is fucking packed.
Yeah, this is a fine example of some of the earlier books where they where it didn't feel like they were just filling in space. Because in this case, they weren't. They didn't have text that they could copy and paste from somewhere else and, quickly rejig and slap it together again. This required them to actually build a book themselves, because we didn't have an 8th edition or 7th or 6th edition Warhammer Fantasy Battle book that they could draw from. Instead, they're drawing from Total War. And that Total War lore is collated and pieced together for the first time in miniature battles in a pretty decent stab at a book. It's only 48 pages. They all are. But the art matches generally the art that we get in all the other books. And the art from the other books is copy-pasted from Order Army lists. And that means that we've got a pretty strong 6th edition Warhammer feel all the way through. Because most of the art that they've got to draw from is the 6th edition, the black and white pieces that they use. So they've got a similar style to that. And there's just loads of new pieces in this. Lots to interest. And when I first read this, I was like, oh, fucking yeah. Look at these pieces of art. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know all this background because I know most of Total War stuff. This is what I expected. Holy shit, they're really painting Cathay as perfect. This doesn't feel like Warhammer. Okay, really perfect. And I started to have warning bells going off while simultaneously going, I don't fucking care because this is all cool and new. And Shiyama, what the fuck? As it then started presenting new details to the lore on top of what Total War had already done. So it wasn't simply just rehashing Total War stuff and saying, here's our first stab at an army for it. It took the stuff that Total War did, sat down and went, what can we do to add to that and bring interest? Nailed that, and then went on to present a pretty incomplete army.
Yeah, so I'm going to be pretty blunt of that. I very much agree with Andy of that. When I first got this book, I was just expecting to get all the Total War lore. When instead they spent how many? Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When they spent 5 pages, 4 of which are packed with text detailing the entire of the Cataclysm War. That blew my fucking socks off because they didn't need to. That wasn't a requirement.
So, as we discussed when we reviewed this book, a huge chunk of this book is an absolute waste of space. It's an absolute kick-ass book for people like us who like lore, but it's a waste of space. They should have been doing things like, what are the primary Cathayan cities? What is it like to come over from Cathay to the old world? Yeah, Why are they doing this and how?
And once again, this leans into that from a old Warhammer perspective. This feels like they took the Cathay Army book and they chopped it into 3 chunks, with this being chunk 1, which was like ancient history. And then chunk 2 was Dawn of the Storm Dragon, which is modern. Like, how do we deal with the world? What is Cathay up to nowadays? And then Breaching of the Great Bastion was, what's it like living in Cathay? Which was a really weird way to split that up.
And it's thus a slightly weird book. This book does not tell you anything about Cathay. This book tells you about a whole chunk of history and a whole bunch of really cool units. And it gives you a dragon. Fuck yeah. It's got lots of cool art. It's kind of awesome, but it's also massively empty when it comes to any real idea of what it's like to live in the place beyond a bit of propaganda at the beginning. It feels like a propaganda piece. It doesn't feel like God voice is at all appropriate. This is not a well-written book. This is not a book that makes you go, yeah, Warhammer's version of China. This is a book that makes you go, are they really keen to sell into China? Is that why the lore's written this way? Is that what's going on? And if it's not that, then maybe you should sit down and think about what Warhammer's tone is, because your other books do a better job of it. This book sort of doesn't. But hey, Shiyama, yay!
Yeah, it's weird reading a book and feeling like, did they get CCP approval for this? Like,
yeah,
yeah. So,
yeah.
We'll go ahead and start the vote because I have to say that it's SABC. It's definitely
it's SABC. If you think this is the peak that Games Workshop could produce for the entirety of the old world, you know what to vote. If you think this is not, you also know what to vote. If you think this book is actually a bit bullshit and they could have done much better, you also know what to vote. Remember, you can vote on both Twitch and YouTube if you wish to do so.
Yeah, and it's so weird. Like, it's like we've been saying, if you were to take this, Dawn, and Breaching and combine them all into one book, it would have been a great book. It's so weird.
It would actually have been a pretty good book, but this book is missing a lot of detail that the other books have. It doesn't have a timeline. It just isn't there.
Yeah, no, because the timeline's in the other book.
Yeah, exactly. It's weird.
Yeah, CEO of Necromancy. I'm an absolute dwarf fanboy and was very disappointed on how mad that book is. Also, how dare they get the future High King's name wrong? Ugh. Yeah,
I agree with you, CEO of Necromancy. I'm not an absolute dwarf fanboy. I am a dwarf fanboy, though. And I was very disappointed about how mad the book is. It's so middle of the road to the point that it's depressing.
See, John, it very much seems like all these books seem to need, 50 more pages like the old books. Hard to agree. And to be clear, they did something that we're not fully covering on this, which is that, and I don't like that they did this. It was super weird, which is that technically all of the army books were combined together into the Forces of Order and the Scouring Hordes or the Ravenous Hordes, which is kind of good guys and kind of bad guys book. And it's all of their army books with all of their rules slapped into these big fat hardbacks to basically just let everyone play with their old minis immediately. But because they did that, these are expansion supplements, which is, some of them, it works okay. Like the Beastmen book performs the job it's trying to perform very well. So does Bretonnia. Both of those did a very good job of feeling like they're an expansion to the information we already had. But they shouldn't have done that with Cathay, to be bluntly honest, because it's a brand spanking new faction that has nothing in the big rule book. It should have just been a uniquely large army book because it's a brand new faction. And instead, they kind of shot themselves in the foot and did this very awkward thing.
Yeah, and for a first book, it made the mistake of keeping all of the pointless information about how Cathay formed. No fucker cares. They didn't do that with all the other factions. They just gave a quick opening paragraph saying, this faction exists and has done for this long, and they're over here. Yeah. And then this has just loads and loads of detail that doesn't matter. It talks about Lizardmen, doesn't matter. It talks about a whole bunch of stuff that's just not old world facing. It's a book that's clearly designed for a slightly different game.
Yeah, and I'll once again be very, very blunt of, I hope with all the hope in my heart that in second edition, there are no more Arcane journals. They go the way to the dodo and they're gone forever.
Yep, agreed.
I tolerate them because they are what we have, but compared to the army books and campaign books that Age of Sigmar and 40K get, they're trash.
They are trash, completely. The Age of Sigmar books and the 40K books are so much better. These are flimsy, detail light, often lore wobbly books that change from book to book because it almost feels like no one really knows what they want them to do.
Yeah. Okay. Oh man, looking at the time, we gotta speed the fuck up.
Yeah, look at the time. We do need to speed up.
Yeah. So we're gonna end it there, and it seems like it seems like pretty strong as B.
Yeah, I think that seems a pretty strong B as well from what we have. So do you feel that B is a good place for the Cathay book? And do you think it's better than, what's the other one there?
Dawn of the Storm Dragon.
Yeah, oh, well, there we go.
Yeah, so I would say it's... I have very biased feelings about this book because it's the first ever Cathay book ever of all time. And for me... that makes it instantly S tier. I'm going to be completely honest with you guys.
No, not for me. I have the same bias. I think it goes ahead. I think in the greater scheme of Arcane journals, this is an easy A. In terms of the greater scheme of books, it's an easy B. I think you have accurately nailed it. It's not a great book. It makes so much wrong in terms of presenting a consistent Warhammer faction in a way that we can all understand it. in the same way that we understand the factions as presented by the other Arcane journals. It just screws so much up. But what it does offer, I really quite like.
Yep. All right, that takes us to the High Elf realms.
High Elves.
Once again, I'm going to be kind of hitting the gas a little bit here. So basically, this gives you a very small little tidbit about the elves generally, and then it focuses very, very hard on completely brand new lore, which is the elven colonies in the old world. Saying, hey, guess what? The elves actually still have a ton of territory on islands around Bretonnia, and they're very present. And we get this whole story about the main story, which is the Dark Shadows of Shalong, which is basically that there are some Beastmen causing some problems for Bretonnia, and Corhill Lionmane, who makes his grand return, ends up leading a nice big contingent of elves into the forest to help Bretonnia, which is actually super exciting for me personally, because Corhill back in when he was originally introduced into Fantasy, which I think was 7th edition, was always said to be like
I think it's 6th, isn't it? I think it's 6th.
Six only had 3 high elf characters. It was Emmerich, Tyrion, and Teclis.
Then was it 5th? Because I had Coral and I had it pretty early.
I mean, he doesn't.
I think it might be
like
5th.
He doesn't look like a 5th edition mini.
Yeah, it was a metal one originally, as I recall.
The last one was metal. But anyway, while you're doing that, so Corhill was always established as this is a guy who has many friends that are not high elves. There's a lore note about that he goes out to fight outside of Ulthuan, but we never get any details about it. This book finally gives details about it. It finally goes, yeah, you remember how we talked about Corhill would go help other people fight? Here he goes.
Well, Coral's in 6th.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm seeing if I can find him anywhere else.
So this book gave us actually showed Corhill Lionmane doing what it claimed that he did back in Warhammer Fantasy, which is great. We also got a new character, Ishaya Vess, who's a brand spanking new character that was actually a piece of
Marcus.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah.
I forget 5th had like a gajillion characters. I always forget
really
that.
did. Yeah.
5th had so many fucking characters. So we get Ishaya Vess, who is a gorgeous new character, which is she's a very rugged high elf naval commander that watches over one of the great fortresses of the elves outside of Bretonnia. And like I said, their story is them dealing with a lot of Bretonnian high elven politics. Yep. And how the elves navigate that, and Corhill going to kind of sneaking into Bretonnia to fight a Beastman army to help out with some things. And the armies of infamy both tie in directly to the story, which is that you get the Seaguard garrison, which is that the group that is the main focus of the book gets an army of infamy, and the Cracian Warhost, which is Corhill's army that he leads into Bretonnia to go attack the Beastmen in the Forest of Shalons. And the units that we got added are very cool. A surprising amount of them got new minis. They also brought back the Storm of Chaos units. So we got the Merworm, the Ship's Company, Stormweavers. And frankly, I'm going to say it, this book kicks ass.
Yeah. My opinion is not that different. Now, I don't want to be backed into the corner of saying that I'm some sort of elf lover here, because I am going to say that this is one of the better books. And I have been charged before with saying that. But this was the book that when I went through it, I had this sort of reaction. Oh, it's the high elf one. I'm already sort of bored. Let's see what we're going to get. Really? They're doing Crace? What the fuck are they doing Crace for? What's that got to do with anything? Then I read it and I was like, oh no, I see why they're doing that. Nice idea. Crace is not the sort of army you'd expect to find over in the old world, but they gave a good justification for it. And sure, they were just trying to pull on the minis that they wanted to release, and they gave a good justification, but they gave a strong justification for them being there. And the whole Coral story was also cool. And I was like, okay, no, this is pretty decent. Oh, Mark Gibbons concept art from back in early 2000. So cool. That's coming back as a special miniature. Oh, I love that. And I remember pinging up to Mark. Hey, Mark, have you seen this? And he's like, I've just seen it being released. And Mark was super excited to see a piece of art that he'd done over 20 years earlier getting turned into a new model for the old world. And I went through the book, and yeah, most of the art's old. And yeah, some of the map bits are a bit dodge, but the detail, going through the Sea Lord's realm, it wasn't rejigging old material and just presenting it again, but worse. As in, all of the entries were much smaller. So here are the dwarf holds, but we're really, really trimming the information down. Not much longer. All of the information was new. And it was fascinatingly different to what had been presented before. So this is an example of where the old world book is doing exactly what it should do. The Arcane Journal is doing exactly what it should do. It's only missing, I recall, a timeline, because I do recall there wasn't one.
Correct. There wasn't. There was no timeline.
There wasn't a timeline. And do I also recall correctly to give them dark magic?
I think the Stormweavers might.
Yeah, which is some proper bullshit there. It does have downsides. Some of the lore is just shit, wrong, and not high elven. But overall, the book is pretty damn decent. It is, of all the ones we've seen so far, the one that I most go, you know what? This isn't a bad book.
Yep. And okay, we're gonna hop straight to the vote because
I'm cool with that.
So get your votes in. We're not going to give you a long. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to go down to like 2 minutes per poll. So vote quick. And so that's High Elf Realms. It did, Shayavest is so fucking cool. And the other thing it did actually is that this book establishes a very interesting mystery to explore later in the lore, which is what is Sea Lord Ashlyn up to? Because it very much establishes that he's up to something, but nobody knows what it is, and he's stopped preventing chaos groups from reaching the Empire.
I would really like to have seen him in the book, though.
Yeah,
we should have had rules for him.
I'm hoping they're saving him for a reason, but we'll see.
Yeah, we should have had rules for him.
Yin visits. Draconian Maze, been rewatching a lot of the Dogwing and Tarpacon streams. Korn's view on runes. What if one of the brothers went after rune lore and Throne of Power? Like actual dwarf runes, I don't think Korn cares. But I think there are some among Korn's legions that would be fascinated by them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if one of the brothers went after the Rune Lord and Throne of Power, they'd probably die, to be honest. One of Tarmacon's brothers. It'd be a noble effort, though. All right, y'all got about 50 more seconds. Darius Rose, when it comes to models that disappointed you after reading the lore, which were yours? For me, it was the Shaggoth and Greasus. I'd have the Shaggoth be Scout Titan sized and Greasus be Great Unclean One sized. I don't think Greasus should be Great Unclean One sized.
Neither do I, but he should be big.
I think the actual Greasus mini got his size right, and that he's on a chariot base. Like he's huge compared to the other ogre minis.
He's pretty big. Galrauch, depending how you want to do it. That's what really pisses me off.
Yeah,
the rules for him are bullshit.
Yeah, he's terrible.
The Golden Drake is absolute pish.
And also his paint scheme is really weird. Because there's no gold on him. They made him blue and red for some fucking reason.
Some bullshit in that one. Just no.
Yeah. All right. That is time. And both chats agree on A rank.
A rank. So where do we put them in the A rank? We've got I can't actually see which ones we've got. I think we've got Bretonians there.
Bretonnia and Hiles. I'm going to be honest. I think Hiles goes straight to the top.
I agree.
This book is genuinely excellent.
It's genuinely great. I don't know if I'd say excellent. I think it does the best with the format they have.
Comparatively,
comparatively, I think this is probably the best book, which I think says something about the Arcane journals in general. But I do think this one nailed it. It's got a few flaws, a couple of lore errors, definitely some mapping errors that should have been sorted, and it's taken a couple of odd choices, and Ashlyn should have been in there. But beyond that, good book.
Yep. Okay, that takes us on to Orcs and Goblins tribes. So,
yeah, sure.
Orcs and Goblins. This book's weird. The first few pages focus on what is it to be an orc. Cool, whatever. Then you get some stuff about the Badlands, which is fine. And then the book takes a hard left turn.
Yeah.
and says, hey, you know how we were setting up this book to be about the Badlands? Hey, go fuck yourself. Here's Wah Kiknik, which Wah Kiknik instead focuses on a goblin warlord up in the Grey Mountains who is doing stuff in Bretonnia, but it's not about the war boss, because it says specifically that there's war boss Spinecracker. His is the big Wah. He's the big bad. Kiknik is just sort of like near him. And they're like, oh yeah, but we're going to focus on Kiknik instead, which is really weird. He ends up joining up with Spinecracker, which is fine. It's setting up for a big fight that the Bretonnian lore hints at. So it is moving the narrative forward and is fine. For your faction stuff, you get the nomadic Wah rules, which is cute. It's basically like an all fast moving Greenskin army. It's Greenskin army that likes to move quick. And then you get the Troll Horde. Troll Horde, genuinely good army of infamy, added some really cool stuff.
Yeah, it gets the magic, gets the troll hag finally. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, Kiknik Tooth Snatcher is the new special character. He doesn't have a mini. If you wanted to make him, you have to kit bash him. He's fun, but he feels weirdly disconnected from a lot of what the book has a section about him, which is fine, but it's weird. It's just, Kiknik's kind of a bizarre character. And then Ogra's Swamp Digger, hilarious character. He is an orc that dresses himself like a troll, and he's lived among trolls for so long that he's a shaman that's kind of gone native, and he's genuinely hysterical. He's a very funny character. And then we get troll hags with 2 pages worth of rules for troll hags. Badland Ogre Bulls, which was a really weird inclusion in this book, but it gave everyone...
We want to have ogres, let's have some.
And then they brought back the Bone Grinder Giant, cute, and they gave us Black Orc Chariots, cute. And then Lore of Troll Magic, the coolest Lore of Magic in all of First Edition.
Yep.
It's my favorite Lore of Magic in the entire edition. And then your magic items. This book, I'm going to put my opinion pretty bluntly of that. It's fine. Kiknik feels like he should not have been the narrative focus of the book because he doesn't really do a lot. He's kind of like harassing Bretonnia, but it feels like Spinecracker should have been the focus of the book. It's fine. It's a fine book.
Yeah. And my side is, this book is as middle of the road as you can get. Narratively, it's a bit of a mess. Rules-wise, it does some cute things. I think their little tribal wandering around Wah guys are a bit dull. They could have done better, but the troll side is really quite funky. It doesn't do anything that excites me, and I think the special characters are a bit naff. Because they're not really driving the narrative forward with the same way that other characters clearly are. Now, that might change as they move towards the second edition and use those characters to do shit. But as it currently stands, I was just left with they tried to do an orc book and it's sort of okay.
Yeah, this book kind of feels like it's setting up for something, but I'm not really sure what. I think it's setting up for like King Lewin Orc Slayer is going to go. I think King Lewin Orc Slayer, because we know he's about to fight Spinecracker. I think he's going to kill Spinecracker, which is why he's not a playable character. And
which
then Kiknik,
sort of bullshit in and of itself.
Yeah, and I think that may lead to Kiknik takes over as the Greenskins like migrate and retreat, which then would kind of make sense why he's the focus of the book. But it's so weird because like I said, the first part of the book says, I'm going to tell you all about the Badlands. And you go, oh, okay, so I'm going to get a Badlands campaign. And the second part of the book goes, no, it's a Bretonnia campaign. And you go, what? Why?
Yeah, it's just a weirdly constructed book.
Yeah, I feel like this book should have been about Swamp Digger leading a troll horde into part of Cetra's army down the Badlands. Because we see that happens, and that's talked about in one of Cetra's books, where there's like you see down here, like the Greenskins attack Cetra's army as they're going up through the Badlands. And that kind of feels like what this book should have been about, and it's not. And it's really weird. For
me, it felt like it was half a book, and the other half was missing.
Yeah.
But then that's the Arcane journals for you.
Yeah, it was. It's odd. Not terrible.
Right, let's get to the vote because time.
Yeah, it's already going.
Excellent. How's that vote going already?
It's looking between B and C, depending on where you vote.
Excellent.
Exiled one.
Oh my God!
Here is there a Warhammer Fantasy roleplay book that covers Bretonnia material? So if you're looking for older books, there's Knights of the Grail, which is a pretty good book. It's a bit outdated, but overall holds up okay.
I don't like it that much.
Andy's
sorry, David, if you're out there, David Chart, who wrote it. Yeah, I had some issues with it when it was released in the way that I have issues with every book.
Yeah. And then the new Old World, which I still haven't read it, but the new Old World Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, the core book has some stuff about Bretonnia, but it's not super detailed. We haven't gotten anything new for 4th edition or Old World that focuses solely on Bretonnia yet.
But we're going all the way back to
Bretonnia
2nd.
to S tier. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The exiled one. Bretonnia is now sitting at the top. It's
and
just
that is
possibly
time.
Oh wow. Okay.
Okay, so it's very close. YouTube is 44% B, 40% C, but Twitch chat said 71% C, 29% B.
It feels right to go with Twitch then in this case, since it's so heavy and the other side's so close.
But very few people voted.
Okay, on the Twitch side.
Yeah, like 7 people.
Okay.
So I'm thinking low B. I'm thinking low B.
Okay, so if that's the case, let's just drop it exactly where it is.
Yeah, and frankly, I think that's a perfectly fine place for it.
Yeah, if I was voting, C, easy C. This book is shit. It doesn't do anything for the old world.
Honestly,
it's a solid book, but it's shit. It's almost like they went, what can we do to be the most uninspiring book possible? And they very carefully went, orcs are this, orcs are that, but without breaking any of the rules. And they sort of managed to build this. It just doesn't do it for me.
If it wasn't for the troll stuff,
I would put trolls.
I would. If it wasn't for the troll section, I would have put it in D.
Yeah, the trolls completely swing it round for me, but that just swings it round to a C for me.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we've got The Raising of the Westerland. So this book is actually a bit deceptive. It disguises itself as a campaign book. Yeah, it disguises itself as a campaign book, but it's actually something completely different. So it does start off with a campaign note, which it basically details the arrival of Friedel the Chainmaker into the Westerland and her conquering the Westerland and what she sets up, and then basically says, "Oh shit, Miao Ying shows up." And that's where it ends. So weirdly, this book is released after the Dawn of the Storm Dragon.
And it's going back in time.
It takes place before the Dawn of the Storm Dragon, which is super weird. But after the lore section, the book is basically reveals what it actually is. This is the Norska army book. It's literally what it is.
Yeah.
The next section details what are the Marauder tribes like, and it breaks down how the Norskins and the various Marauder tribes view the Dark Gods with their own unique view, which was actually pretty cool. Me and Andy did a stream on this book, and it actually does some interesting things. Not all of it's great, but some of it is great. But it does some kind of cool stuff. Shadow of Chaos basically just talks about like what is it like to be a Chaos Warrior, and it gives it's literally just some random guy, and you follow his path to glory and how he basically dies. Doesn't really do anything that interesting. It's just kind of a narrative about a guy who, to be very blunt, literally doesn't matter. It just fills up space, which kind of. But then it does give you Path to Glory rules for how to play a Path to Glory campaign, which is cute if you like narrative campaigns. It's actually a very, very solid narrative campaign supplement.
I agree.
Then after that, you get some scenario battles to go along with your Path to Glory campaign. And then you get to the units where, frankly, this book shocked me with that. It's like, oh, okay, you get Marauders and Horsemen. You go, okay, that's cute. But then you get to the next few pages where it's like, this is how you run Chaos Cults. This is all these new rules to give all of your units all kinds of cool thematic enhancements that represent mutations and unique interactions with Chaos, where you're like, oh, that's kind of fun. You get the lore of the Shadowlands, which is basically just kind of like a unique lore of Chaos for Chaos. That's a Chaos lore. It's like dark magic, but Chaos. It's a weird lore of magic.
It's weird.
And then you get magic items. But this book, if you are someone that wants to play a Norskin tabletop army, this book is required for you. It's if the book had been called The Tribes of Norska, I would have been like, this book is exactly what it says it is. What a great book. But it's a campaign supplement, which is once again, it's weird. I don't hate it. It's odd.
This book is bullshit. It claims to be one thing. It's something completely different. It claims to be a campaign book, and yes, it's got effectively a set of Path to Glory rules for a quick narrative campaign there. But it's mostly, in terms of the interest value it holds, a Norse book. And even then, that's a small fraction of the overall book, where it's telling a story that we've already kind of learned about.
To put it bluntly, this book was made for one purpose, which is that GW was releasing new minis, which were the Marauder Horsemen and the Marauder Infantry. That's what this book is. It's, hey, you like Marauders? Here's our new minis. Also, here's a book to go with them.
And to make matters worse, none of them were really Norsey either. So the actual thematic tone for the book doesn't really match the Warriors of Chaos that were released, which are pure Warriors of Chaos in terms of their overall tone. So the whole thing's a bit of a mixed bag of results. Norse, yay, but they don't look like Norse. Boo. Warriors of Chaos, yay, but these are sort of Norse themed. Oh, wait a minute. Hey, cool story that's about characters that sort of don't matter, or alternatively, it's the story we've already heard in another book that's already been released. Oh, what the fuck's going on here? It's just a weird one. And when I got my copy of it and I read through it, I pretty much put it down right after and went, that was a bit of a fucking waste of space.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it like you could have never released this book and nothing would have been lost from the setting. It's fine. Like, I wasn't sad I bought it. I didn't have buyer's regret, but I was like, all right.
It's a thing that happened.
All right, polls up. This one I went A, B, C, D. Also, Too Chill, thank you so much for becoming a Prime member over on the Lorebeards Twitch chat. We really appreciate the support. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to run to the bathroom really, really fast because I got to pee.
So while you're doing that, I'll see if there's any super chats that we've not caught, because I don't normally do this, but everyone else does. So let's do a quick rundown. Oh, no, there isn't any. So that makes my life super easy. I'm just going to sit here and say, we don't need Ryan. We don't need him at all. He's listening to me right now through there doing the toilet with his headphones going, screw that guy. What's he talking about? But we don't need him. I've taken over the entire channel. So what do? I say, what are we going to do for our next one? What is the next army list on our... Let's have a quick check as the votes are coming in. And by the way, the votes are currently sitting at C over on Twitch, which is what I'm watching. And you can make an enormous difference on that if you wish to do so, because very few have voted over on that side. So you can make a huge difference right now. And what's our next one?
I gotta say, I don't think I'm a fan of listening to someone rant at me while I'm trying to use the bathroom. Anyway.
I thought that was a perfect way to spend your time in the loo.
Yeah, just perfect. Fantastic. So yeah, please do get your votes in. Quick. Crim Galto, get the fuck out of here, dude. But how did High Elves get D? They didn't. High Elves are in A.
And that speaks to the issue I had right at the beginning. It's almost impossible to see which army list is which when you view them like this.
Wait. Is that? No, why are High Elves in D? They should be in A.
They should be in A. What the fuck?
Yeah, they should be the very top of A.
How did they get there?
Those sneaky... Did someone... Those... Clearly it's a Zechian plot.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Well, nice job spotting that, Jake Wu, because I'm amazed you could tell which book that was.
Well done.
Yeah.
Cool.
Whoops.
Okay, what's our vote then?
Okay, so the polls done. So it is a very significant C over on Twitch, YouTube, very, very neck and neck of 36% B, 30% C. Twitch was also split between C and B, but they leaned more on C.
Well, we generally have been giving weighting to YouTube, but that's a heavy weight to see over on Twitch. And people could have gone to Twitch if they wanted to weight it back again. So I'm sort of happy with Twitch winning it because the percentage is so high. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
You're fine with that? Cool. Okay, so what do we have there as well? We've got the Dwarves. Is it better than the Dwarves, do you think?
I do not think it's better than the Dwarves, but I do think it's better than Breaching of the Great Bastion.
I agree wholeheartedly, which means we can now move on to Khemri.
Yes, so the Tomb Kings of Khemri, which is a really stupid thing. So GW early on in first edition had this obsession with that the Tomb Kings is not the Tomb Kings, it's only Khemri, according to Games Workshop, which is super dumb. It's not just this book, it's literally like the whole Tomb Kings army line is not the whole, it's not all of the Tomb Kings, it's just a single like province within it, which is so dumb, and I hope they stop doing that going to the second edition because it's obnoxious.
It is really, really stupid.
So this was, I think, the second Arcane journal we ever got. So this one, we get the Land of the Dead, which tells you about like what life is like and what they're up to and all that stuff. We get a focus on the geography, despite the fact it's called Khemri only. They do then detail all of the major tomb cities for some reason.
Because we do.
Yeah, and then from there we get, our artwork, and then we get into the storyline, which is Cetra's Fury. And Cetra's Fury basically is, this book is a hardcore follow-up to if you read the novel, the prequel novel that was released by Games Workshop, that follows like a bunch of Bretonnians going down and pissing off Cetra, which wakes them up. And this follows Cetra's invasion up through the Badlands into the Border Princes. So it's the earliest part of his war. This book is frankly one of the most important from a campaign narrative perspective, because it kind of follows the kickoff event of the old world. For your armies of infamy, you got two pretty good ones, actually. We get the Army of Kings. The Nehekarn Royal Host, which the Nehekarn Royal Host is basically, if you're playing with Cetra, you should be using this. It's Cetra's personal army. And then we got, I'm going to say it, one of the coolest armies of infamy, the Mortuary Cult. Because they went, we're going to give these fuckers all sorts of cool new toys. And they gave us a bunch of lore about, hey, you remember old Warhammer fans? You remember how we had all that lore about how big ancient Nehekhara was and how it stretched all the way up into the mountains of the Black Mountains and stuff? Well, guess what? There's a bunch of secret vaults that were left behind by the Mortuary Cult ages ago. And now that Cetra's invading, Lich Priests are sneaking in and reawakening all of these ancient statuary and stuff. And everyone went, well, that's fucking cool. For characters, we got Cetra. He has his ugly ass old model that I hate, but he did get a decent set of rules. Prince Apophis came back, and we also got a brand new mini for a character who has existed but never had a mini. The Emissary of Cetra. He has a really cool mini. It looks really good.
Fucking brilliant.
And then for rules-wise, we got a ton of units that are basically like the units you already have, but if you kit bash them, they turn into something else. Which this book ran with. So you get things like the Arch Necrotect, the more powerful Ushabti, the Necro Serpent. So you build like you build like a Necropolis Knight, but you don't put the guy on top of it. Hey, now it's a Necro Serpent. Hooray! Tomb Guard Chariots, which always felt like that's something that that's actually a callback to 6th edition when the Tomb Kings had heavy chariots. And then more magic items, which is great. Tomb Kings always need more magic items. This book was quite fun, and the campaign is one of the most critical ones.
Yeah, and my summary for this one, again, keeping it short, is that it was one of the first books. And much like most of the first, like 2 or 3 books, it got sort of painted with disappointment from people from the old Warhammer, excitement from the people showing that new lore was coming. And it was really difficult to try and understand what this book really was because it was so thin. And we were all a bit confused as to what these books were going to be. And our first stab into them was sort of disappointed. With time, this is one of the better ones by some significant measure. It presents a couple of pretty awesome extra armies. It presents a bunch of really fun bits of lore. Admittedly, it's scant when it comes to describing the history of the Tomb Kings, who Cetra even is. Basically, he's a cackling bad guy. It's not brilliant for depicting Cetra, but it is a lot better than some of the other books. I quite like it.
Yeah, there's something, Andy has kind of said this over and over, which I think it's worth pointing out, that one of the things that's so bad about the Arcane journals in general is they assume you already know what everything in the book is about.
Yeah.
Like, if you're brand new to the setting, it doesn't tell you much. But
it doesn't.
Yeah, I will say, like, for me, like, the campaign is so cool that, like, it's something that has immediate consequences. Tor Anrock being destroyed, raised by the Tomb Kings, that's huge.
Cool.
That's genuinely huge. Like, we get a big fight against the Greenskins. Cool. Like, it's a busy book.
Yeah, busy book, lots going on. Do you think it's one of the best books? And even if you do you think it's worth anything more than a B, or maybe an A, or maybe even the hallowed S? That is entirely up to yourself. I presume the votes are going up right now.
Yes, votes are up. Please vote.
Okay,
please
votes
vote,
are up. Go get voting. And remember, the Twitch vote is super easy to influence if you want to make a difference on it. So do please go and do it. The votes are coming in already thick and fast. I love it. It's entirely up to yourselves where this one lands. Again, do you think it's better than, say, for example, the Cathay books that we've already gone over? Do you think it's better than Bretonnia? It's up to you.
Yeah, like Andy said, he likes it thick and fast. So thank you, Necroflare, for the super chat. If they exclude mentioning all sector titles, it should be D. They do have an entire side panel dedicated to all of Cetra's titles. It's obnoxiously long. It's great. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me personally, this book holds up surprisingly well.
It was really fun to go back to for me because I didn't like it first time round. It's a bad book, bluntly. Yeah, it's not a good book.
If I compare it to like the 8th edition, any of the 8th edition army books, I go,
yeah. Yeah, it's really bad. It's bad at setting up what Nehekara is. It's bad at explaining who Cetra is. It's bad at almost everything. But it does, in its 48 pages, do more than most of the other books. It's slightly sad that this ended up being one of the best books in the Arcane Journal line. Do I think it's worthy of S? Well, that's not up to me. It's up to you.
Yeah, good old first edition Old World. I will say the book, the quality of the book for me is saved very heavily by the Mortuary Cult. That helped. The Mortuary Cult is just fucking cool because, like, there'd always been the
Twitch.
Oh yeah, okay, so that's time because we got to move on.
Whoa, Twitch was pretty heavy.
So Twitch actually got more votes than they have on most of their polls. They got 70% S, 30% A. Where on YouTube it was 43% A, but only narrowly behind it 40% S.
Okay, 40% S. Now, again, we're at the point where do we weight this by Twitch? Again, it's a heavy S by Twitch.
Yeah, actually, if I look at the number of people that voted in both polls, I think if you were to port their votes over, the Twitch viewers, there's enough of them that I think they would barely take it to an S.
Well, that being the case, we should be on an S. So then the question is, are they better than Bretonnia? And I do find it really interesting, even though one of them's all the way up there because somebody sort of bribed us. I do find it really interesting. It's the two oldest books that are at the top because, bluntly, they were better at the beginning than they became later. And which one do I think is best out of those two?
Oh,
I mean, that's a shout. I think probably.
Yeah, they're pretty even.
Probably Cetra's book. Probably no stupid book called Kemri, but it's only probably. It's hard
because, like,
what to call.
Yeah, Bretonnia did a lot of really cool things, and I think did a beautiful job of reuniting all the different versions of Bretonnia back together, which was a very good accomplishment, and it added.
Nakaf.
Yeah, but Lady Elise Duchamp.
She's not that great. She looks like she's made of porcelain. She doesn't look like a Warhammer mini.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna give it to Tomb Kings.
Interesting. I think I'm really also doing it. Tomb Kings it is. I think between those two, it's Tomb Kings. If I was voting in this would be an A book. This wouldn't be an S book. This is not S tier. There's too many things that it gets wrong. But it is, in comparison to the other Arcane journals, a fine example of their breed. That now leaves us to, what's next?
We have the War of Setras. We're missing a book. What the heck?
What book are we missing?
We're missing the Empire.
We don't have the Empire of Man there.
No, they're in C for some reason. They're that middle C book.
Okay, cool. That middle C book? What the fuck? How did that get up there?
I don't know. They're like teleporting around for some reason.
Huh. Well, hey, Empire of Man then.
Yeah. Well, no, they're after this one. So, okay, we have the War of Setras Fury. The War of Setras Fury. This book was the second major campaign supplement released, and basically this covers it significantly advances the story of Setra's invasion. So we go from Setra has made it into the Badlands to Setra smashes the shit out of the Badlands.
Charge!
Splits his army into three. One portion of his army lays siege to Barak Var. One portion of his army slams into the Bretonnian border princes, and the other army starts marching up into the mountains. They wipe out a lot of border prince cities. And this book, so much happens in this book narratively. I think this is the most narrative dense book of all of the books. And this book also added this book also was this book also added the most armies of infamy, which is 3, because every major faction in the book got an update, unlike all of the other books. So this one, you get a major Tomb Kings update, where they added in a new type of War Sphinx. They added in new mounts for Tomb King characters. They added in a new lore of magic, being the incantations of the Mortuary Cult. Then you got the Renegade Crowns, which is expanded rules for your Bretonnia. If you wanted to, technically it's an expansion of Bretonnia, but it's basically playable border princes. It's the border princes army. And they're basically like, you could use Empire Bretonnian shit. We also gave you like 2 new characters to use to lead your armies. But it was playable border princes, which was very exciting for a lot of people. It actually has a surprising amount of units too, because it's got like knights that you could customize the fuck out of. It's a lot of very customizable units. Like Outriders are literally, you can customize them with spears, bows, pistols, brace pistols, heavy armor, light armor, all the rules you want to pick. The free blade knights. Do you want great weapon knights, lance knights, sword and board knights? Do you want them to be heavy knights or lighter knights? Do you want for your sellsword infantry? They can have spears, halberds, great weapons, crossbows, handguns, shields, heavy armor, light armor. Like, it's just pure customization, the army for border princes, which is very cool. And then you get the Warriors of Grimnir, which gives us the Brotherhood of Grimnir, which are a super elite Slayer host, and gives us the Slayer host army of infantry, who actually do something to the narrative. This book is basically hey, what's the Dwarf Mountain Holds up to? This is the book about the Dwarf Mountain Holds.
Which is bullshit. My summary in this one is pretty easy. It's a good campaign book. And possibly the best campaign book. In that it presents an entire campaign, multiple factions with super cool, fascinating new armies, adds a whole bunch of extra cool shit for the Shrine Keepers with Grimnir. It's just loads of nice, gribbly stuff. And it's also telling a story where Setra gets to actually be Setra, rather than being some I'm a stupid person getting kicked in again because I'm a bad guy. It's genuinely a pretty decent book. And again, though, much like many of the Arcane journals, it takes some weird editorial choices. The art is, again, mostly cut and paste from other books. A lot of the details in it are fine. The writing is fine. It's not brilliant, but it is a campaign book so much better than some of the other ones where, for example, you get an entire campaign book and like a smattering of extra cool shit. This is just filled with a whole ton of really cool shit, including a reference even to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, in that the Renegade Crowns, which is the name of the Border Princes book in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay Second Edition, is the name for the I keep wanting to say Bretonnia Border Prince Army, and that's just kind of cool too. It shows that they're showing their notes, so to speak, and where they're taking things from. It is a pretty damn decent book. I was quite surprised by this one, and at the end of it, unlike some of the books where I've said are half decent and are scoring high, I actually quite like this one.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the polls. Yeah,
Sounds good.
This book is so funny of that. It gives you, like with the Renegade Crown characters, it gives you canonical rules on how to make an Estalian or Talayan lord. Because you pick the Might of Maragliano if you want to run a Talayan character, or the Wandering Diestro if you want to run an Estalian character, which is fun. Oh, cool.
I mean, we've not had an Estalian character in Warhammer since 3rd edition.
Yeah, and
that's mental.
So when I was talking about earlier how the Dwarf Mountain Holds
that's
book,
not true. The Lustria book, I think that had one.
Yes, I think it did.
Yeah, it did. But hey, that was set all the way back in 1492.
Yeah,
it was.
So so this is the book that I was talking about earlier when we talked about the Dwarf Mountain Holds, where it feels like the Slayer host and the story of what the Slayer host does, where they hear about Cetra's invasion and go, and all the Slayers start going down to like find their doom to halt Cetra's invasion, really feels like it should have been in the Dwarf book.
100%. In fact, this book feels like it is. In fact, I'm just going to say it for most of the Arcane journals. Most of the Arcane journals feel like this has happened. We've got a big plan with what we're going to do with it all. Your big plan? Stop it. Okay, let's carve up all of our stuff and release that instead. And all of the Arcane book journals feel like they're carved up parts of other books. And what we have is bits and pieces of fragmented stuff that have somehow survived. And some of the books manage to shine regardless. Others just look like they're broken. The only bits of the information you need are in there. The Dwarfs massively suffer from this. This book plugs a lot of the gaps.
Yep. Karl Franz, Emperor of Mandefil. That's all. There you go. In the Marathi video, you say that Aslan-led colleges would be extremely out of character. But what about truth-sayers? They are the chosen human mage servants of the old ones.
Truth-sayers are too busy doing their truth-saying. They don't really have much interest in doing that. You want to come and join the truth-sayers? Off you go to Albion. See ya.
Yeah, I would say if you wanted to do an interesting alt history, if you want to do something akin to this, I think you could do something where Albion didn't get sealed behind the mist and stayed in contact with the old world. And because of that, it ends up becoming like the home of magical learning for humanity in the old world. That is a story you could go with, but you'd have to drastically change the history of Albion.
Yeah, the Truthsayers have got their own story going on, and it's the Druids and their own funky story. And it's not really one that's close to the colleges, for all the colleges have the Jade College and their own version of Druids, but they're almost the great-great-great-great-granddaughter of what's going on with the Truthsayers.
Yeah, so there's something you could do. And I will say the idea of a truthsayer ending up at the colleges and perhaps becoming a very high-ranking specialist member of the colleges.
Votes on Twitch.
Could work. All right, that's time for the vote. So we
only have 10 minutes left, so we've got to move quickly.
Yes. Okay, 52% on YouTube for S and Twitch tied. So that makes it S.
Yes, it is. Right. So where do we want to place this between these three? Because it's two very different types of book. On one side, we've got effectively an army list, and on the other side, we've got a campaign. Now, in terms of the campaigns, I think I prefer this to either of those two.
Yeah, so I would say the War of Cetra's Fury to me feels like what Arcane journals should be used for.
Yeah.
It expands multiple factions at once and it advances the narrative. That's a good use of a small book.
Yeah, and they managed to fill those 48 pages with a lot of cool extra stuff. It seems pretty clear that this is, I think, the best of those three books.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay,
All right.
cool. Where are we up to now? Empire
The
Man?
Empire of Man.
Okay, what about the halflings? Are they men?
I mean, I guess in a manner of they're half men.
What about the Imperial Dwarfs? Are they men?
Yeah, Empire of Man is a terrible name. Why don't they
It's
call it Empire of Sigmar? I don't understand why it's not called Empire of Sigmar.
It's a bullshit name because it's extremely exclusive, and it's also not a name that had been drawn from earlier editions of the game. So they're not even porting over an old name and bringing it up to date. It is not cool.
Yeah. So this book, this book tries to do a lot with a very small amount of space, where it basically throws you in immediately to, okay, the Empire's in Civil War. Like it just like literally the second, like you get 3 paragraphs for this is Sigmar and how he established the Empire. Then you immediately get your ass kicked into Boris the Tyrant and his death and the issues that spread out from it, and then it follows the breaking down of the Empire very, very, very rapid pace. This kicks you over to the Grand Provinces, which explains the general gist of that and introduces some odd new choices, which me and Andy have complained about at large. You then get into some fine sections like what's the terrain like in the Empire? What are the major important cities? Which Nuln isn't in for some reason. They're like, Nuln? Who gives a shit about Nuln? And then, I forgot. Nuln gets the major storyline section later. My apologies. So Nuln is the main feature of this book. This one's kind of odd. So this one is it's kind of like the dwarf book. So
Dwarfs.
where in the sense that where the dwarf book tells a story that's not actually like the campaign of the book isn't related to the overall arcing narrative of the old world. The Empire book does the same thing. The story of Nuln has nothing to do with Cetra's invasion. It has nothing to do with the Beastmen's the rise of Morgur in the Larlorn or the invasion of the Empire of the Westerland. It's just kind of this random story about like a Beastman war herd that builds up near Nuln. And so Nuln's like, oh my God, we got to fight them. And they go up through Stirland. Well, they go from Nuln to Stirland to Talabecland and fight some Beastmen.
Yeah, I'm going to go much further with this one. This is a bad book. I'm hitting it hard. Why? Because all of the lore is contradictory to all of the lore about this era. Which means that for anyone who's a fan of Warhammer, they're left going, wait a minute, where's my Autolylian Empire? What the fuck? Okay, where in fact is the Age of Three Empires and how it's collapsed into a complete black hole? The Empire doesn't exist just now. It's just tons of factions that all claim to be the Empire. There's entire kingdoms in the Reichland just now. Are they mentioned? No. Is anything mentioned that's been written over the last 30 or 40 years about Warhammer in this era, which is a super famous era for anyone that's read any of the older books? No. It's all new. And what's new is just a copy-paste from the later books on Warhammer, like 4th through to 8th edition, of some of the details with fuck all else. They even use the same headings: the Mighty Rivers, the Forest of the Empire, the Towering Mountains. That's right from the 4th edition army list. And they've just basically made smaller versions of it all. It is not a well-researched book. It's not a well-put-together book. And it's, at best, fine.
Yeah, the only...
It's actually Knights Panther, but they got that wrong.
Yeah, so for your like armies of renown, you get the city-state of Nuln rules, which is basically, hey, you like guns? Cool.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Like it's a perfectly fine little army. Then you get the Knightly Orders faction. The Knightly Orders faction is actually pretty fun because it gives you a ton of different special rules for all the different Knightly Orders that are in it.
Which is nice.
It gives a pretty nice diverse list. There's some secular orders, some religious orders. It has the 3 big ones, and then it has 3 slightly lesser known ones. But I mean, they gave us Knights of Myrmidia, Knights of Mor. By Myrmidia, I mean the Blazing Sun, Knights of the Fiery Heart, Knights Panther, Knights of the White Wolf. So like they give you like a pretty nice spread. and that all have their own custom rules and everything, which is pretty cool. So the Knights section is actually really nice. But then you get to the special characters is fine. The Grandmaster of the Knights Panther is actually a pretty fun character. He also has a kick-ass mini that's a very cool reference to a very famous old piece of Empire art of like the Grandmaster of Knights Panther rearing on his horse. Yeah. Super famous art piece that they adapted into a mini.
Tight, so we have
yeah. And then General Hans von Lohenhock, who is a general of the Talabecland army, which, like, cool, I guess. Last thing I'll say is that the units they added are bizarre. You go, oh, it's Knights and Nuln. What's the character I got? The Harbinger of Doom. It's a fanatic or a flagellant.
What the fuck?
So you get a flagellant character. You do get the Tutitan Guard. That's fun. A lot of people like the Tutitan Guard.
An odd choice for a Nuln and Knights book.
It doesn't make sense in this book.
Makes
Imperial
no
Ogres.
That's a choice.
Road Wardens. Kind of a fun unit.
Even there, but...
Yeah, Road Wardens was fun. War Wagons, they brought back War Wagons. Okay, fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
And that's it. This book is very odd. It's not good.
Yeah, I'm happy to call this as a bad book in comparison to some others because the lore that it presents is inconsistent and poorly considered, where other books have managed to draw upon lore quite successfully from various sources. This one has only drawn from their own imaginations or some of the old army lists, and that's it. And there's a ton of detail that they could have drawn upon and made this book 1,000 times better in terms of not just matching other books, but also having a cooler story for the Empire as a whole. A single page or two in this book could have been enough to turn this into one of the most interesting, diverse, and crazy factions that the Empire has ever fielded. This book is dull, and that's my biggest problem with it.
It would have been like, could y'all imagine if this had been the only book that had featured for like the campaign army section had featured Empire versus Empire to represent like the civil warring state of the Empire and how bad things are. It's the only book that has a civil war in it. That would have been really fun.
That'd have been super fun, but it doesn't. There's lots of things they could have done to reinforce how broken the Empire is just now, to really tell the story of how the Empire needs to be pulled together by a figure like Magnus the Pious. This should be the book that you look at and you go, oh, fuck, the Empire's fucked, because we really want Magnus the Pious to have to face impossible odds. This isn't impossible odds. Most of the Empire is kind of fine. It's not a good book.
Rather upsettingly, the Dawn of the Storm Dragon does a significantly better job than this book does at explaining what's going on in the Empire, because it talks about how Marienburg is like, holy fuck, chaos is invading us. Someone please help. The rest of the Empire is like,
yeah. It's just a shame, because this is what the one book that they could really have gone, hey, look how awesome the Empire is, and no.
Yeah, Glenn, I fully agree with Andy that my biggest gripe with this book is that it's not about the Empire of the old world. It feels like, hey, remember the Empire from 8th edition? Don't y'all want to play the Empire from 8th edition?
Yeah.
It's like, no, because we're not in 8th edition. And the Empire is the most drastically different over the course of these 200 years.
Yeah. I mean, the Empire is completely bound together again. You would never know from this book.
Okay, quick one I'm going to read off for the poll-ins. Not sure how well this would work as a stream, but here's a silly idea. Choosing a theme song for each legendary lord. My first nomination, I'm going to be the Pretender. I'm going to be by the Pretenders for Wolfric the Wanderer. See, the problem is Andy's really good about knowing a lot of music. I don't know dick about popular music.
Yeah, I'd quite enjoy that as a stream.
That would be a good, like, y'all and Andy stream. That would not be a good
stream. Our vote is in. Oh, Twitch is split.
Okay, so Twitch got 50-50. YouTube got... Oh, come on, YouTube. Don't crap out on me. YouTube got...
They're going to swing it one way or the other.
6% D, 38% C.
It goes to D.
D rank. Deserved.
Do I think that's
D
deserved? I wholly think that's deserved. Pardon me. I think that this book had the potential to be one of their best books, but they just dialed it in. It's not a good book. The Knights are fun. They are. But beyond that, I could take it or leave it.
Yep.
Okay,
All right,
second
that
last
takes us
book.
to the Warriors of
The
Chaos.
Realms of Chaos. Ba-ba-dum.
So, this book starts off with a very brief, like, what are the ruinous powers? What is chaos? And then it basically delves into explaining where do the Warriors of Chaos live. It focuses a lot on actually how people survive in the Shadowlands and the Chaos Wastes, and actually makes Norsca a lot bigger than it used to be. By some things, instead of making it just the continent, they explain how Norsca actually controls a lot of the southern shores of the Chaos Wastes, and we actually get a decent amount of information about the Cool as well. There is also the Kurgan. I don't know why I said the Cool. So you get like the Kurgan and the Norskins are the main focus. The Hung, nobody cares apparently. Which, to be fair, from an old world perspective, the Hung are not as relevant. But you then get your tribal confederacies, which get expanded on more in Raising of the Westerland. We get the Saga of the Chainmaker. So this book does a smart thing, which is that its campaign focuses around a character who is, for first edition, one of the most important characters of the narrative, which is Friedel the Chainmaker is the first sign that chaos is on the rise when she successfully invades the Empire, and she doesn't just invade it, she sets up shop. And she sets up a new capital in Harlem and begins rapidly expanding, and people go, oh shit! So you get to follow her story of being a powerful warrior that's kind of dominating Norsca to successfully invading the Empire. And explains like how she does it, why she goes, like the times of year that she goes, and what her general plan is. And that she is, frankly, very successful. For the Armies of Infamy, we get one of the most popular, genuinely, one of the most popular Armies of Infamy that was ever released, which is the Wolves of the Sea, because they went, hey, you know what? If y'all want to run a Tribes of Chaos army, you don't want warriors, you just want a Marauder horde, here you go. And they added a bunch of new big monsters where they said, hey, look, skin wolves. Hey, look, like gigantic chaos spawn. You can take beastmen as allies in this army because you're not allowed to take warriors. It's a no plate armor allowed. You are a pure tribe. Which very, very popular army.
Another Norse army, and it's quite fun.
Yeah. Then the Heralds of Darkness. The Heralds of Darkness are kind of a more elitist Warriors of Chaos army that's kind of focused on speed more than anything. Because it's like all cavalry. Everything has to be cavalry or a monster. Then we get Friedel the Chainmaker. She is, I will say this unironically, of all of the characters of the old world, the new characters, she is the most important character that is new, by far. The most important character. You then get Galrock, which Galrock is kind of funny because he's in this book. He has nothing to do with it. He's just kind of here. He doesn't show up in the story. Like when I saw he was in this book, I was like, oh my god, Friedel woke up Galrock, and then it's just like, nah, he's just doing other shit. There is no explanation for why he's in this book. It tells you like it tells you his past in the little sidebar, but there's zero explanation for why he's here. He did get some new art though, so that was nice. It's small, but it's there. Then we got tons of really sexy new units. You get the Marauder Chieftain Lord, Marauder Tribe Berserker Infantry, Skin Wolves are back, the Huskarls as elite Norscan cavalry, the gigantic Chaos Spawn, a Chaos Chariot with Chosen on it, spooky. And then they brought back the motherfucking Warp Fire Dragons, which was a huge surprise, but cool. And then magic items, whoop-de-doo.
So this book is a book of two halves. On one side, you've got a relatively strong Warriors of Chaos book that really does feel like they've gone, we're going to figure out what they're like. We're going to go for some nice, strong ideas. We're going to go our Wolves of the Sea to reinforce that slightly Norse raidery type feel. And then the other side, which is, I don't know what to do for the second army. Let's just make them a bit faster. We've got some spare models sitting around here. We want to sell those too. So let's put them in. In go the Skin Wolves. In goes Galrauch. What the fuck? Some of these are thematically not on point. I don't get what you're doing. Although I can see why the Skin Skinwolves are in there. I'll give you that one.
The Skinwolves are for the Marauder Horde.
You get that one, and they sort of run, but Galrauch makes zero sense at all.
I have a thought.
The Warfire Dragons, whatever.
This book would have been instantly solved if instead of the Heralds of Darkness fast speed boy army, if it had been like the monstrous horde of Galrauch.
Yeah, that would have been great. You'd have had a reason.
It's all creatures and monsters.
Or something similar. Yeah, it's a book of two halves for me. One half is pretty damn good. The other half is someone's cobbling it together and hasn't put enough thought into it.
Yeah, because
trying to be quick.
He has nothing to do in this book, and the Heralds of Darkness have nothing to do in this book. But all the Norskin bits, very cool book, very busy.
Yeah, ABCD, I think, for this one.
Yeah. Okay, ABCD. Let me fix that.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty obvious one. I don't think this deserves to be an S. It's a book of two halves, and if you like the half that it offers with the Wolves of the Sea, this might score very highly for you, particularly because it does have a far more Norse tone than, for example, previous Warriors of Chaos books did, and that's kind of nice. If, however, you are looking at the other half, which doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, and you think it's important that the book hangs together as one thing, you're going to find this one sadly lacking.
Yeah, pulls up. I kind of have mixed feelings because, honestly, it like I kind of said earlier with Raising of the Westerland, this feels like a Norska book. Like it's almost a completely new faction.
And it doesn't do the work needed for a new faction.
No, it's just kind of odd. I love Friedel the Chainmaker. I think she's one of the best characters in the old world. And she is the big bad of first edition. I'm curious if she's going to live that long because she just got defeated by Miao Ying. We're still waiting to see the ramifications of that.
Yeah, quite.
And I will say, I do like Friedel as a prequel to Asvar Kul, which this book has little hints about Asvar Kul. Like there's mentions about something's going on with the Kurgan, but nobody knows what it is yet.
Given we only have 30 years to get this all in place, less than that, in fact, like 20 odd years to get this all in place, I think I would have liked just a bit more than a hint.
Yeah, I really feel like Galrauch, unless they were going to give him something to do, he doesn't need to be in this book. They could have replaced him with someone much more relevant.
Like, hey, we've got the model, let's do it, and let's give it a shit blue and red paint scheme.
Yep, and also garbage rules. He's not very good.
No, he's not. It's using the old rules from, 6th ed? Is that where they dropped that one, or was it earlier?
Six. Yeah.
It's still bullshit.
Where he's like sixes across the board for some reason.
Which is perfect for 6th ed, because it was a far more toned down version than what had come before.
Yeah. He's technically, the sad thing is he's better than his 8th edition version, but not by much, because they at least gave him regen. Zero Daimu, I'm sympathetic to the idea the old army books are better than the journals, but I wish Games Workshop could divorce unit/tabletop rules from lore/collector books, or at least put tabletop rules online for free given errata. That would be nice, and it would be a very pro-consumer choice, but Games Workshop, frankly, doesn't give a shit about pro-consumer, and they want to force you to buy these books.
Yeah, they want you to buy the books because they're little earners. And that would stop a lot of sales. That's never going to happen. I would like it to happen, but that's never going to happen. So, yeah, we have what we have.
Yep. Okay, both chats, it is B, overwhelmingly B.
B, okay, let's drop you up to B. So our choices on the Bs are, I can't even see which ones. It's Cathay, and what's the third one?
So it's Raising. So it's the first Cathay book.
Westerland?
Dawn of the Storm Dragon,
Westerland.
Raising of the Westerland, and Warriors of Chaos.
Ah, man.
I
think it's better than Raising. I think it's better than Raising of the Westerland.
Definitely better than Raising.
Do I think it's better than the two Cathay books? Maybe one, but definitely not the other.
Yeah, I think it's better than Dawn, but I don't think it's better than the original Cathay book.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm good with that. Good.
Last, but possibly not least, the Wood Elf Realms, which, funny enough, is the only other realms is the only time they reused a word for one of the like factions, because you got the High Elf realms and the
Wood Elf realms.
Should have been the High Elf colonies. It was right there, GW. You could have had the
right in front of you, you idiots. But yeah, go figure.
All right, so this book details. So you get like your opening thing of like what is Athel Loren, and it gives you like a general breakdown of it. The Monarchs of the Wood tells you about, like, once again, that mostly focuses on Orion and like notable elements of Orion's story. The Kindreds gives you some art, and then the Corruption of the Larlorn. So basically, this book is focused entirely on a battle in the Larlorn Forest, where you get the buildup of Morgar has been sighted. Orion uses the World Woods to transport a large army to the Larlorn. They team up with the Larlorn elves, and they strike down at Morgar. And this is the part 1 of that story. The Beastmen Brayherd's book is the part 2 of the story. So these 2 books are chained together, which makes sense. It's a nice, the good old, back in 6th edition, it was referred to as the Secret War, which is the war between the Beastmen and the Wood Elves that everyone else is like, I don't know what they're up to. For the Armies of Infamy, we got
Wild Hunt.
The Wild Hunt, perfect. Makes perfect sense for this book and is great. And then, rather bizarrely, we got the Host of Talzin, which is fine considering that it feels like the Larlorn should have been the second Army of Infamy, is the Larlorn host, but they're like, nope, it's Talzin. So Orion gets his profile. He also got some new art. He looks fine. Yeah, he's great. Cool. Orion, neat. Then Erloth shows up. Erloth is alive during here, and he's already the Erloth we know for the most part from the old world. So Erloth showing up is fine. He feels like kind of a random addition, but it's whatever. Then for units, you get a lot of Talzin themed units. The big thing that they added, though, which was a lot of people were very excited by this, and I agree with them, was the Wood Elf Beast Packs, which the Beast Packs is actually a really old system from old fantasy, when you could just like bring almost any creature or monster you wanted with your army. And they're like, yeah, it's the Wild Hunt. Creatures get caught up in the Wild Hunt. So you could bring a lot of weird creatures running around with your Orion army. And
I used to have a ton of these in my old Wood Elf army.
Yeah, and a lot of people looked at that and went, oh, that's actually really cool. So that was fine. We got rules for how to run kindred characters, where they could have different aspects relating to certain animals or certain types of kindred. So you could get you could have like a Eternal Guard themed character or a Wild Riders character, a Scout character. So that was cool. And that's also a nice callback to like 6th edition, at least. Then they brought back the lore of Athel Loren, but for some fucking reason they called it the Lore of the Wilds, which is really confusing for players because the Lore of the Wilds used to be the name of the Beastmen lore of magic.
God damn it!
Yeah, so there's no reason to call this the Lore of the Wilds. It should have been called the Lore of Athel Loren. I don't know why they did that. And then we got magic items, and that's it. Pretty run and done book.
Yeah, this one suffers because it's sort of trying to do all of the Wood Elves and then focus on a tiny number, where the High Elves book doesn't suffer because it has no attempt to do all of the High Elves in the slightest. It's just the group that have come over, a small number, which the Arcane Journal can focus on, so it's much tighter as a remit. This one basically goes, here's all the Wood Elf shit! But we don't have space to actually give you all the Wood Elf shit, so it's really empty of really useful detail. And then they focus in at the end, and you're left going, where's all the story for this clean focus on these 2 groups? And the answer is, they sort of do some of it, but not all of it. And they sort of sidle away and don't really think too much. It's basically the High Elf book minus.
Yeah,
it's not as well executed in almost every front.
Yeah, which is really sad considering this book was like one of the last ones.
I know.
Yeah, but so this book, Andy could not have said it better. It feels like a crappier version of the High Elf book. If it had been purely focused on the Larlorn, like you could still have Orion, that's fine. But if it had been purely focused on the Larlorn and Orion like showing up through the world routes and the Larlorn dealing with all the shit going on, it would have been the equivalent of the High Elf book.
And it would have been a clever book as well, a good way of showing how the Wood Elves could manifest differently. Cute new army lists that use the same models but do completely different things. It would have been awesome. But instead, what we ended up trying to do is cover all Wood Elves with a tiny remit on the edge. It's not well executed.
This book also really suffers that there's no brand new character. It's all oldies. And that really sucks because the High Elf book, they got Ishaya Vess, who is fucking cool. This book should have had Queen Mariseth as a playable character.
Queen Mariseth should have been in there. It would have been fucking awesome.
Erloth does not need to be in this book. I'm fine with Erloth coming back. He didn't need to be in this book.
Awesome, but not needed. Yeah, it's cut a long story short, it's a bad version of what the elf books can be rather than a good version. The High Elf one was legitimately a pretty good version.
It's not a terrible book. It's not like nearly as bad as The Empire of Man. Nowhere
near. I mean, this book is fine. It's the Empire of Man is rewriting everything badly. The Wood Elf book is basically just trying to squeeze far too much into far too small a space.
Yeah. All right. Pulls up. But it's like, the storyline campaign is good and advances the narrative. The Lara Lorne should have been the second Army of Infamy and should have gotten its own special character. But like the units and rules we did get were cool. Bringing back the beast packs from like 4th edition was really cool. I don't know.
Yep, agreed. I mean, there's lots of nice little details in here, and I do like the beast packs because I used to collect them. I've had a beast pack character in roleplay because it used to be one of the careers that you got in Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 1st edition. But no, it's not a great book.
Ricky Chapman, we love Chaos, and the Chainmaker is a fantastic addition to the ranks of Chaos, and the first Chaos Dragon's Return is welcome back. But how cool would it have been if Arabal or the Hammerstorm had been in there instead?
Yeah, and there's absolutely no reason that all of the models that are currently existent on the Age of Sigmar side couldn't have had just rules slapped out for them anyway.
Yeah, God, please, God, let the AOS stuff that makes sense and the fantasy stuff that makes sense just do what it needs to do.
Yeah, exactly. Just print the fucking rules for them so you can buy more minis.
It will give them more sales. That's the thing that pisses me off about it.
And it appears to be largely a political reason for not doing it, as in the Age of Sigmar people want to keep their stuff separate and clean, and that's just bullshit for people who just want to play with the minis they love.
I will say now that it seems pretty much guaranteed that this would have been in the plan for multiple years at this point, that their plan is to blow up the setting anyway. Fuck the AOS team when it comes to that. I'll say it. Fuck them. That's stupid. If they're gonna blow up your own stupid setting anyway.
Just yes to that. Get your votes in. We've got like 2 seconds left. It's just about done. It's C over on Twitch.
And it is tied on YouTube between B and C.
Okay, what's the tie? Tied exactly?
Exactly.
Okay, given it C on Twitch, then it goes down to C. Okay, so then we've got the Dwarf book, we've got the Sebastian book, and it's better than the Dwarf book. So that gives us our tiered list. That there is the complete list for all of you there. Download that image so we can go post that elsewhere.
Yes.
Don't go away. Thank you very much. No thanks. We have our complete list all nicely finished with at the very top, etc., going down to the bottom where we have the empire of not halflings or ogres or dwarfs that also live in their empire of Sigmar stroke man. I think that in general, your tiering has been really good this time round. If I was doing this, I would be tempted to put none at S tier at all, because I don't think these books are worth it. Their best books still have some egregious editing errors and some really weird lore choices that massively change stuff that came before without making it better, often making it worse than what came before, which is rarely what you're out to do. But having said that, if you have to put some at S, the ones you've got up there are not bad. They are the first examples of the Arcane journals that came out, which were genuinely some of the best ones. And we've got ourselves the strongest campaign book up there too. I think it's not a bad list. Thank you all for being so thoughtful when you're putting your votes in.
Yeah, that being said, I forgot that Necroplayer did indeed meet the requisite amount to do a fuck you thing.
So let's end on that, eh? Unless anybody else wants to throw super chats before we end.
Yeah, I'm going to roll a dice, and I'm going to correspond it to the order in which we did it. And whatever...
You did it. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And whatever number it lands on, according to Necroplayer, that book immediately gets shunted up to S tier. No matter what.
Let's do it.
I roll. Ooh, that's a big number. So that would be 12.
14, I think.
So
what?
12th book.
12th book is?
Hold on, I've got them in reverse order here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Which one is it?
The Empire of
you're kidding me! What bullshit end is this? Necroplayer 987.
Oh, no! We got the worst ending. No!
How did this occur? What the hell has happened here?
Son of a bitch! We thought we made it. We thought we made it. Just at the fucking buzzer.
Oh man!
The ruinous powers could not let us have a happy ending.
Genuinely hilarious end where, sadly, the Empire somehow takes the top tier, just like Games Workshop always seems to want. Always placing Empire first before everything else. You'd almost think they're going to replace all of the awesomeness of the whole of the Warhammer world with just the Empire and the Sigmar bits and call it, I don't know, Age of Empire. No, Age of Sigmar. Let's call it that.
Yeah, no,
it's almost like Games Workshop are controlling us through the dice.
Yeah, thank you for that, Necroplayer. That was easily the funniest part of the whole fucking stream right there.
Fucking brilliant.
That landed on the worst possible number. Anyway, we are almost 30 minutes over time, so we got to bounce.
Thank you all. You have been absolutely astonishingly fun. Until next time. Wait a minute.
Yeah. Oh, real quick. All according to Ronald. Does Ronald do that kind of shit now? Is that what he gets?
Ronald screws with our list, apparently.
Apparently he does. All right. Anyway, thank you all for watching. We will see. Don't forget 40K Lorebeards tomorrow. And then Lawhammer on Friday.
Oh, it's a big one. The hammer returns.
Yeah. Oh, and the Total War reveal show will be Thursday morning. So you got a stacked week of stuff to look forward to.
That sounds awesome. Until then.
Bye.